Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description.
One Piece Legends by xAlreadyOverx. Luffy dreams of becoming the queen of the pirates, not just to find the One Piece, but to prove Shanks wrong after he told her she could never be king. Armed with the powers of the gum-gum fruit and a fierce determination, she set sail despite her inability to swim, relying on her loyal crew and trusted first mate to survive the dangers of the Grand Line. But as the journey unfolds, Luffy begins to experience strange, unfamiliar feelings, especially whenever her stoic swordsman is near. Could it be more than just friendship? Or is this just one more mystery waiting to be unraveled on the high seas? And before we start, a massive shout out to the warlords of this channel: Case Clark, Leaf5_SCXR, Tristan Ward. You three are the backbone of this community. Your support means the world. Seriously, thank you for standing with me. If you want to join the ranks of these legends, hit that join button and become a channel member today. Let's grow this thing together. Much love, and as always, adios.
Luffy's past. Enter red-haired Shanks' memory. You walked into my life. But just like that, you walk back out, still you will be a memory. A memory that I have created in my mind, still you will be a memory. A memory that will always be locked away in my heart and my mind. I will always have a memory of you in my heart, and I will always carry that picture of you in my mind, still you will be a memory, by Nicole Edwards. Somewhere in the middle of the ocean, three weird-looking men sat on a small boat counting a large pile of treasure with greedy glee. They are the tightrope-walking Funan Bros, members of the infamous Captain Buggy's crew. Hee hee, look how much loot we stole in only 2 days. All of this should keep Buggy from being mad at us. Hey, what's that? One of them saw another smaller boat not too far from where they sailed. We should check it out, another said, tilting back the brim of the hat on his head. They changed course and sailed their ship closer to the small rowboat, and when they leaned over to take a peek inside, what they saw made them smile deviously. A girl with orange hair lay limp over one of the sides of the boat, appearing to be unconscious. Hey, wake up, little girl, the pirate with the hat called, poking the girl's arm a few times. She stirred slightly and blinked up at the grinning men leaning over her. A soft smile came to her face and she said in a dazed voice, "Ah, thank goodness, a rescue. Please, please, I desperately need water. I've been thirsty for 2 days. Just please give me just one sip and I'll give you as much jewelry and valuables as you want. I just need water." She waved her hand dismissively towards a very fancy-looking chest that sat at the opposite end of her rowboat. The lid was closed, but with its style it was probably filled with tons of treasure. The three pirates smirked at their luck. Another treasure they could steal and a pretty girl to boot. Things couldn't get much better than this. "Don't worry, we'll help you. But first we want to see the treasure. Then you can have as much water as you can stomach," said the pirate who had first sighted the ship. The three quickly made their way over to the girl's small rowboat and the third bent down to try and open the lock. With a click he threw the padlock away and just about to open it when suddenly a panda head sprang from the chest like a jack-in-the-box. The surprised pirates jumped back in shock and stared at the box in confusion when they heard a mischievous chuckle coming from behind them. All three quickly turned around to see the orange-egg girl sitting calmly in their boat, sailing further and further away from them. "If you want, you can keep the whole thing, it's not my style," she called cheerfully back to them. "Hey, get back here. She stole our boat. You tricked us." They kept yelling and cursing at the thief who stole their boat and their stolen treasure. Their captain will be really mad at them now and probably kill them in a most sinful way. Then the girl held one hand up to shade her eyes. "From the look of those clouds moving in from the south, you guys should expect a strong wind and squall any time now." True to what she said, a big cloud formed above them almost instantly, its edges sparking with lightning. Then the girl continued, "Also, a small boat like that won't last long in a storm." Once she finished, the clouds drew closer and closer toward the three panicked pirates. It started to rain and a powerful wind knocked the boat around, making it wobble and shake brutally, before flipping it over along with the pirates on board. The whole event lasted barely 3 seconds. The girl grinned in triumph, her plan had worked perfectly. Bingo, see ya. I'll just borrow whatever treasure you got here. Get back here you, bitch, we'll get you for this, plorb. Meanwhile, Luffy and Zoro had been sailing over the endless ocean for 2 days now with no island in sight, and the food supplies disappeared quickly after the first day. Zoro rested against his trademark napping spot at the bow of the boat, his 3 swords resting protectively in the circle of his legs. He watched Luffy, his eyes bored, as the small captain hung over one of the wooden sides, fingers dancing across the waves. So hungry, she moaned and let out a small grunt as her stomach grumbled and gurgled. Zoro let out a sigh and closed his eyes, his mouth downturned in a frown. This is just great. We're in the middle of nowhere, we have no food and no water, and on top of that we have no idea where the hell we are. He grumbled and for the millionth time wondered what had possessed him when he decided to follow this clueless girl. Luffy remained silent and didn't say anything back to Zoro, which was rare for her. For the past 2 days the girl had been nothing but a big ball of limitless energy. She was talkative, laughable, and downright childish. As such, at the current moment, Zoro was doing what he could to hold onto the ridiculous amount of sleep he had missed out on lately, while Luffy was miraculously distracted with, wait, what was that hyperactive captain of his actually doing? Shuffling a bit, Zoro peeked one eye open to see Luffy still at the other side of the boat, which was really only few feet away, craned over the side of the boat, staring at something in the water. Zoro watched for a few minutes as Luffy's head dipped lower, disappearing from sight and moving back and forth. Zoro snorted slightly, struggling not to laugh. No doubt there was some kind of big fish Luffy couldn't help but follow, like a cat with a goldfish. She reached out further, this time one of her hands reaching out to the water and skimming over it and back, tracing the waves as she hummed loudly to herself. As Luffy pushed herself out just that tiny bit further, Zoro frowned, moving forward slightly, body tensing. Luffy was a devil fruit user, right? So that meant she couldn't swim, yeah? So why the hell was she balancing so precariously out of the side of the boat like that? What if she fell in? Zoro contemplated it for a few more seconds before forcing himself to relax back again, a slight scowl traveling to his face. Who made him her babysitter? Luffy obviously wasn't a child. She was his new captain, not his charge. She could look out for herself. After all, he didn't really think the younger girl was that irresponsible with her own safely, especially when she had shouted her dreams of becoming the queen of the pirates to Zoro loud enough for everyone to hear. But Zoro had been wrong before. But what did he really care if Luffy fell in? Well, he'd have to save her, of course. But she'd survived this long on her own, hadn't she? Sighing, Zoro let his head fall back, and he groaned to the sky. This one-man crew job seemed to already be much more trouble than it was worth. But Zoro knew deep down that was wrong. There was something about this girl, this hopeful, dopey kid, that made Zoro want to be all he could be. So maybe he should do something about the impending danger Luffy constantly seemed to put herself in. Blinking his eyes open to do just that, Zoro was met with a nice view of Luffy's small, tight ass. It was high in the air, with Luffy's torso well over the side of the boat by now. Shaking away the hot flush that rose up his neck, Zoro reached out a hand to grab her ankle. Luffy, he started warningly as his hand closed around the skinny limb. At the same time it did, there was a splash from the side of the boat, and a thick tentacle waved itself from the water toward Luffy's face. She leapt back with a squeak as the tentacle shot for her neck, but Zoro's grip on her ankle contradicted the huge sideways leap she attempted. As a result, Luffy's ankle was ripped from Zoro's hold and she toppled backwards over Zoro, right over the opposite side of the boat. The spray from Luffy's splash showered over Zoro, who was still sitting there, staring dumbly at his hand which until recently had held Luffy's foot. She wasn't there anymore, though. She was in the water. Zoro's eyes finally wid the tentacle had stopped in its assault, and had paused when Luffy hit the water, before shooting downwards eagerly. Without hesitation, Zoro followed. "Oh no you don't," he growled to the unnamed tentacle as he dived under and everything turned blue around him. He immediately caught sight of the octopus right below him, with the source of his problems drifting helplessly within the clutches of the masses of thick and powerful tentacles that were winding themselves around every part of her body. Zoro angled himself down, pulsing with anger. The octopus was no bigger than Zoro, but that didn't hamper it from going after Luffy. He could see it now. It wasn't just that devil fruit users couldn't swim when they were underwater. They were completely immobile and powerless. Luffy couldn't even struggle. She was limp, easy prey for the giant octopus, who now had his impressive amount of appendages curled far too tightly around her thin neck, waist and legs, and was now starting to move towards the far-off bottom, probably to slowly digest its meal. Reaching them, Zoro grabbed the closest waving limb he could and yanked it with all his might back towards him. Like hell I'm going to let that happen, he snarled internally. The octopus whirled on him, its black eyes narrowed in anger as it hoarded Luffy behind it, its front tentacles flying out at Zoro. Zoro caught each one, and yanked the octopus again around to avoid a third coming for him. This would have been so much easier if he had his swords, or just one. Damn. Wasting no time, Zoro pulled the whole octopus towards him and leveled it with a smashing blow, still holding the tentacle in his hand as he punched, which regrettably wasn't nearly as powerful as it would be underwater, but still had the desired effect. The octopus reared back, its tentacles lashing, but Zoro held tight. Gritting his teeth, Zoro tightened his grip on the two tentacles he had and planted his feet squarely between the beast's eyes, before pushing as hard as he could, straining against the octopus's attached muscles. Harder and harder he pushed while ignoring the attacking tentacles, pulling and pulling. The skin around the base of the two tentacles he had started to tear, and the octopus started spasming under the pain, its eyes wide and unseeing. Black blood started pouring from the octopus, and it went crazy. Satisfied it would no longer fight back, Zoro's grip eased, only to have the octopus rip away from him in blind fear and take off. Luffy was seemingly forgotten within its hold, and her limp body was dragged along. Zoro started swimming frantically after them, his panic rising. He hadn't planned on it bolting like that with Luffy, damn it. After a short bout of swimming in crazed panic, Zoro just managed to dive forward and grasp the tip of a tentacle, ripping the poor beast back towards him again. Shoving the failing tentacles out of his way with a bubbled grunt of anger, he located Luffy and started to madly rip all the tentacles off her. The suckers popped off, leaving behind tight bruises and circled marks, but Zoro couldn't have cared less about that right now. His breath was starting to run out, and he needed to get Luffy out of the water now. Finally disentangling Luffy from the terrified octopus, Zoro kicked his way to the surface, allowing the octopus to dart away. They burst to the surface in a rush of water and air, both panting heavily as the sun turned their eyes to slits. Luffy coughed and hacked as Zoro held her head up, water spewing from her mouth in gasping spurts. Zoro winced at the blossoming bruises that were forming on her too pale neck as she spat out the last of the water. Zoro quickly cast his head around for the boat, before spotting it nearby and, making sure Luffy was breathing against his chest, started paddling awkwardly with one hand. He didn't get very far before Luffy's head weakly slumped forward right into the water. Zoro stopped immediately with a curse and pulled Luffy's head up gently by the forehead. His brow furrowed as he thought of the best way to transport the exhausted devil fruit user in the water. Coming up completely blank, Zoro almost missed Luffy's small hands trying to grasp at his chest and encircle his neck, unable to do so because of her sapped strength. Catching on, he wrapped a hand around her waist to hold her up and used the other to lift each of Luffy's arms around his neck, automatically leaning back so her hands would stay there. Luffy's head rested on Zoro's chest for a moment before she slowly lifted it and met Zoro's eyes, their faces close. She smiled weakly, but brightly. "Thanks, Zoro," she said warmly. Then, giggling, she leant forward as best she could and pecked Zoro on the nose. Zoro blinked, his mind chugging along, before he realized what happened and he flushed. Yeah, he mumbled, leaning back further so Luffy was fully supported by his top half. "You're an idiot, you know that?" Zoro received a cute giggle in response. Turning around, he held one arm around Luffy's back as they lay in the water chest to chest, and he was not letting his mind wander to how it felt to have her small body pressed against him, his powerful legs kicking them back towards the boat. He tried to keep the embarrassment, or worse, the pleased smile off his face, but failed as soon as Luffy's forehead fell back to his chest, where she definitely wouldn't be able to see his face. It was annoying for Zoro to try and drag the both of them into the boat, but as soon as he did they fell together in a tumbled heap. Rubbing the back of his neck with a grunt, Zoro sat up, realizing Luffy was sprawled in his lap, panting lightly as she tried to regain her strength. He also realized he didn't have the heart or need to push Luffy off. "What the hell were you thinking?" he asked shortly in a frustrated voice, his now mild panic fading, but still present. "How the hell could you let yourself fall in like that? You know you can't swim." He lifted Luffy up like one would to a child, frowning at the light bruises forming along her arms and neck. None of them were bad, but they would be impressive soon, and he hated the tight feelings they brought to his chest. "I know," Luffy's voice was weak and hoarse, but she grinned happily at Zoro, before innocently stating, "But wasn't Zoro the one who tripped me up by grabbing my ankle? That would make it Zoro's fault." There was a short brooding silence from Zoro, who realized that Luffy was, shockingly, right, before Luffy laughed, pushing herself up Zoro's body until she was resting with her side to Zoro's chest, legs curled over Zoro's and head resting leisurely against his collarbone. "But I wasn't worried. I knew Zoro would save me." Her voice was so confident and serious as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, and Zoro was an idiot for not knowing. Zoro opened his mouth to say something, then realized he didn't know what to say to that. The unwavering trust that had so easily been placed in him without a second doubt. No one had ever trusted him with such responsibility before. But, you dumb ass. What if I hadn't been here?" he groused, still struggling with the strange situation. Luffy tilted her head up cutely, blinking, her face blank. "But you were." Zoro growled in frustration at Luffy, again finding no rebuttal to her innocent and straightforward logic. Luffy grinned knowingly at him, her hand reaching up to tip her straw hat back, only to find it wasn't there. Luffy's eyes widened, and she scrambled wildly out of Zoro's hold, falling flat on her face before pushing herself quickly to her feet. The boat rocked, and Zoro gripped the side for support. "Luffy," he yelled. "Calm down, you'll fall in again." "My hat," she cried, panic in her tone, looking around, head whipping almost comically from side to side. "Where's my hat?" She finally spotted it floating in the ocean where it had fallen, a far ways off from where their boat now drifted. Without a second thought, she leapt off the side of the boat for it. "Luffy!" Zoro dived for luffywhat and swiftly grabbed the scruff of the girl's vest, jerking her straight from midair and back into the boat, fuming. "Wait here," he snarled, anger clouding his eyes at the thought that she had just tried to throw herself back into the water he had barely just dragged her out of. He quickly removed his waterlogged boots. "I'll get it, you know, 'cause I can actually swim." Completely oblivious to the pissed sarcasm in Zoro's voice, Luffy clasped her hands in worship like wonder, staring at Zoro with stars in her eyes from her place at the bottom of the boat where Zoro had unceremoniously dropped her. "Nay, Zoro? Really?" Her answer was a huge splash as Zoro hit the water a second time that day, and started stroking swiftly towards Luffy's wayward hat. He reached it in no time, grabbed it, and started making his way back, grumbling sourly the whole way. Before he could even clamber back in, the dingy Luffy had whipped the hat from his outstretched hand and was hugging it for all she was worth. Zoro growled angry as he hooked his leg over the side and rolled in, dripping water everywhere. That was just great, no gratitude. He wasn't prepared for Luffy to suddenly pounce on him, eyes shining like the sun, even though he strangely expected it. "Zoro, you saved him, you saved my hat." And just like that, Luffy began raining light kisses on Zoro's forehead, nose and cheek. Zoro's eyes bulged to a comical degree and his hands landed on her slim shoulders, ready to shove. Then one of the kisses landed pleasurably right beneath one of his eyes, and his mind short-circuited. Wah? Luffy didn't slow down. "Thanks, Zoro," she squealed. "No one has ever jumped into the ocean for my hat before. You're the greatest." Zoro seriously considered sharply telling his new captain that no one had ever jumped him and considered him the greatest before just because of a stupid hat, and no one ever should. But as her smile widened and her mumbles of gratitude continued, Zoro found himself suddenly not as obliged to shooting his captain down as he would have. Luffy stopped after a minute and lay over him grinning before she sat up. Zoro about to protest at the stop before he caught himself. Silence reigned as the two stared at each other, before Luffy simply smiled at him. Zoro found himself blinking, his face slowly melting into a small but pleasured smile. "Thank you, Zoro, really, this hat means the world to me." Zoro shifted back into a comfortable sitting position and reached for his swords, his eyes still focused on Luffy's happy face. "You're welcome, Captain." She placed the hat happily back on her head and turned to stare out at the endless sea, humming happily to herself. Zoro watched her, content, for a moment before a thought popped into his head. "Hey, Luffy?" She turned back to face him, head tilted in a curious manner. "You said you promised someone you'd become queen of the pirates, right? Does that hat have anything to do with that promise?" She giggled and pulled the hat over her eyes, her smile wide. "Yeah. This straw hat means more to me than you can possibly know. It's been with me through many fights. It's something so precious that I couldn't give it to you, Luffy." Flashback 10 years ago, in the peaceful town of Fuchsia Village, part of the small island of Goa, located near the Red Line northeast in East Blue. In Party's bar, a group of pirates are having a celebration. There is no true reason for them to be partying, but they do so anyway, eating pork and drinking sake until their stomachs bulged. Except for two who seemed to be chatting. One was a man of 27 years, with the most striking features: bright red hair, 3 scars across his left eye, short scruffy beard, and a straw hat. Next to him sat a 7-year-old Luffy, her hair pulled up in a short ponytail, wearing a white and blue striped shirt and a pair of blue shorts. She turned to the man next to her and said, "Hey, you gotta take me with you on your next adventure, Shanks. I want to be a pirate just like you." Then Shanks laughed. "Right, as if you can ever be a pirate. Why couldn't I?" she whined. Off to the side, Shanks' first mate, Ben Beckman, sat at an empty table watching the conversation while smoking a cigarette. His long black hair was pulled back into a ponytail and he smirked at the young girl's never-ending demand. At another table close to him sat the ship's sniper Usopp, skinny with shoulder-length blonde cornrows, who watched Luffy fondly. Next to him was Lucky Roo, the roundest pirate on the ship, eating a leg of meat and waiting to see what would happen next. "Look, Luffy. You can't even swim, sweetheart. You'll never make it out here as a pirate," Usopp chided gently. "But I'm a great fighter. My punches are like pistols, and I can just stay on the ship," she said as she held out one of her fisted hands. "Are they now?" Shanks replied in a bored tone, head resting in one hand as he ate his meal. "What's that supposed to mean? Haha, it means you're too much of a kid, said Lucky Roo. "Yeah, he's right, I got boys that are older than you," one of Shanks' crew said. "I'm not a kid, I'm a grown-up," she yelled again. "Here, have some juice and calm down," Shanks chuckled, handing Luffy a glass cup of apple juice, her favorite, and the kitten-like anger she was feeling melted away. "Wow, thanks Shanks." She drank the juice quickly and put the glass back down, humming happily when the entire crew laughed suddenly. "I don't know one pirate that drinks juice," said Shanks, covering his mouth while he laughed. "Hey, you tricked me." The crew began to laugh even harder at her glare. "Stop laughing. That was a cheap shot." As they continued to laugh, Makino, the owner of Party's bar, watched the scene with a chuckle. She wore a yellow kerchief, an orange blouse with black sleeves and a long light blue skirt with orange and white sneakers. Her hair is dark green that flows down to just above her shoulders and cute chocolate brown eyes. "Luffiko, would you like something to eat?" she asked, maneuvering a large barrel behind the bar. "Yeah, I'll pay you back with my treasure." She cheered as she turned to face the older girl, her original anger at Shanks fading. "What treasure, Luffy? You're lying," Shanks teased, poking at her face. "No, I'm not. You seem to be having fun today, Captain," Makino giggled, ruffling Luffy's hair affectionately. "Of course," he laughed, "teasing her is my joy." "Told you," Luffy hissed back at Ben. The first mate had been continuously trying to tell Luffy that Shanks didn't tease her to be mean but to make her think seriously about what she said. Right now though, he thought, muffling a chuckle, Luffy might be right for once. "Shanks?" Luffy's voice turned serious and the red-headed captain turned to look at her. "How long are you gonna stay?" He thought about it for a second, downing a bite of food with a swig of sake. "Well, we've been using this island as a base for about a year now. We'll come back a couple more times before we head further north." "A few more times, huh?" Luffy sat back, shoulders slumped slightly, before she sat up straight, eyes flashing with determination. "I'll learn how to swim by then." "Good luck," Shanks encouraged. Suddenly the door burst open, flying off of its hinges and sliding across the floor. They all watched as a tall man followed by a troop of mean-looking bandits stepped into the bar. Luffy recognized the leader as the mountain bandit that had been on all those wanted posters, Higuma. He had black hair and a goatee and an X-shaped scar above his right eye. He wore a long purple coat with a white shirt and black trousers. He also had a golden necklace around his neck. Everyone sat perfectly still, tensing as if preparing for trouble, except Shanks, who continued to eat his meal. "Excuse us," Higuma said in uncaring tone as he walked past Shanks' crew, stepping on the pieces of the broken door as he walked. He took notice of the pirates around him and smirked in disdain. "So these are the pyra about?" He chuckled humorlessly. "They look rather sad to me." He shoved in next to Shanks, upsetting the pirate's balance somewhat, and slammed a hand on the counter. Makino quickly walked over to Higuma, wanting to avoid any unnecessarily violence. "Good afternoon, what can I get for you, gentlemen?" Her tone is polite, but you can clearly hear that her tone was stating that she didn't want any trouble in her bar. Luffy watched unworriedly. "We're mountain bandits, but we didn't come here to tear your place apart. We just want some sake. 10 barrels should do," said Higuma. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid we're fresh out of sake right now," Makino apologized, body slightly shaking. "Interesting, those pirates seem to be drinking something and it doesn't look like water to me." "No, that just happens to be the last of what I had stocked up. I'll have more of it next week though." She bowed slightly in apology, but it didn't seem to have much effect because Higuma's expression began to darken with anger. Shanks turned to the bandit leader and held out a bottle of sake he had been about to open. "My apologies, gentlemen, it looks like me and my friends drank the whole place dry. I still got one unopened bottle if you'd like. Go ahead." Shanks offered Higuma the bottle with a smile which only seemed to anger the bandit leader more, and he grabbed the head of the bottle and struck the pirate with it, shattering the glass and spilling sake all over Shanks. Makino and Luffy gasped in surprise at the sudden attack, but Shanks' crew seemed unfazed that their captain was attacked. "Who do you think I am?" Higuma shouted angrily. "One bottle is not enough. I'm a wanted man with 8 million barras on my head and I've killed 56 people. Don't insult me." Shanks sat there silent, his face hidden underneath the brim of his straw hat. Hall almost appeared angry, but then he bent down and picked up a large shard of glass. "Geez. The floor is all wet with sake now. It'll get sticky if it dries. Sorry about this, Makino," he apologized, moving to pick up the rest of the shards of the broken bottle. "Do you have a rag?" "Oh, don't worry about it," Makino stuttered, moving to run around from behind the bar. "I'll take care of it." Before she could reach Shanks, Higuma unsheathed his sword and slashed horizontally at the bar backing where plates and empty cups rested. Shards of glass and ceramic flew everywhere, forcing Shanks onto his butt on the floor. "Since you like to clean so much, here's some more work for you," Higuma hissed, turning his back on the bar. "Geez. A place with no sake is not worth our time then. Let's go, boys, see y'all later, pansies." As once they all left, things got really quiet. Luffy could hear her teeth grinding as she fought back her anger. That rotten bandit and made fun of her friends and Shanks. But what angered her even more was that none of them did do a thing to stop him, not even a good punch to the face. "Captain, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" Makino asked, leaning over Shanks as she wiped sake and food away from his face. "Not a problem in the world, Makino." Then he began to laugh, a loud wholehearted laugh as if it had all been some kind of practical joke. His crew quickly joined in. "He really got you good, boss," said Usopp, sniggering into his fist. "Talk about a loser," Lucky Roo added, holding his round gut as he chortled. The crew continued to laugh, the sound so loud that even the townsfolk could hear them from outside. Then Luffy stood on her stool and howled. "Why are you all laughing? What's so funny? You should have fought back, Shanks. It doesn't matter how strong they look or how many of them there are, but instead you just laugh it off. You're not a man or a pirate." When she finished, she stood there gasping, tiny fists shaking with rage. Everyone was silent, surprised by her outburst at Shanks, but the red-haired captain understood. She was angry, not because he didn't stand up to Higuma, she was mad because that man had insulted him and his crew because he thought that they were weak. "Look, Lou, I know how you feel, but the guy just spilled some booze on me. He's not worth wasting my time on. Shanks spoke softly, trying to make the little girl understand, and deep down, she knew he was right, but she was still angry. Whatever, I don't want to talk to you right now. She turned away from Shanks, biting her lower lip to keep from yelling or screaming or crying. Instead, she jumped down from the stool and started to walk away. Luffy-ko. Shanks sighed, reaching out a hand to catch her arm as she passed him. She continued to walk, ignoring his call and expecting her wrist to slide out of his hand. What she wasn't expecting was to feel her arm stretching the further away from Shanks she walked. Apparently, she wasn't the only one shocked by the new twist of events. Most of the pirates around her let out similar cries of shock, and even Ben jumped out of his chair to run over to where she stood, staring back at Shanks with wide eyes. "What's happening?" she screamed, trying to yank on her arm and finding that it only stretched more. Lucky Roo abandoned his place at the nearest table and ran to the bar, where a small treasure chest had been sitting. "Captain, the devil fruit we took from the enemy's ship is gone." Shanks let go of Luffy's arm and it quickly snapped back towards her, and she would have fallen over had it not been for Ben appearing behind her and steadying her. "Luffy," she turned her head to stare at Lucky Roo and stared quizzically at the piece of paper he held in front of her face. It was a quickly drawn picture of a round piece of fruit. It would have looked just like an orange if not for the swirls covering every bit of its surface. "Did you eat this?" the large pirate asked, shoving the drawing closer to her face, as if that would make her remember quicker. "Yeah," she began cautiously, drawing out the word. "It was dessert, wasn't it? Not very good tasting though." She wrinkled her nose in distaste and stuck out her tongue before glancing up at Ben, whose hands were tightening on her shoulders. "I'm sorry. Were you guys saving that for later? I don't think you would have liked it, Ben." Shanks knelt in front of Luffy and placed his hand on her cheek, turning her face so she would look at him. "Luffy, that thing was a devil fruit. One of the rarest treasures of the sea. Whoever eats it becomes a rubber man." "Like superpowers?" Luffy began to get excited and a small grin started appearing on her face before Shanks continued. "No, Luffy. It's a curse. Now that you've eaten it you will never be able to swim, ever." Her eyes widened in shock. "WWWHHHHAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA incident in the bar with a promise to return. Surprising everyone but Ben, Luffy had taken to her new life as a devil fruit user with the same amount of cheerfulness that she approached everything in life with. She had promised Shanks that she would learn some new moves by the time he came back, even though she claimed she was still mad at him. But now, there was a commotion in Party's bar. Inside, everything was completely destroyed. Plates and glasses broken, food scattered across the floor, and tables and chairs knocked down and broken. The commotion had started while Makino was preparing to open the bar. Luffiko sat on her normal seat, using a straw to swirl ice around an empty glass. Shanks and the others have been gone a long time now, Makino commented, wiping off the wooden bar. Are you lonely, Luffy? No, she pouted, turning her head. The lie was obvious to Spot. Luffy had always been a terrible liar, but Makino and the others found it slightly endearing. I'm still mad at Shanks for letting that guy badmouth him. Really? Makino asked. I thought it was brave of him to laugh it off after getting picked on. You don't understand, Makino. The doors swung open before the young woman could reply, and Luffy turned to see who was entering. Her eyes widened in shock at the sight of the mountain bandits into the bar, led by Higuma. Well, looks like the pirates aren't here today. Higuma chuckled, throwing himself into a seat. Well? He pointed towards Makino. We're customers, bring us some sake. Mayor. Makino burst through the door to the mayor's house, panting heavily. Makino, what's wrong? Luffiko was kidnapped by the bandits. Outside of Party's bar, Higuma was pressing his foot into Luffy's stomach, attempting to suffocate her, but she continued to struggle, feet kicking out and fists striking at his leg. You know, we were having a nice time in there until you opened your big mouth, Higuma hissed, glaring down at the small girl. You better apologize, Luffy shouted. No one messes with Shanks' crew and gets away with it. Higuma pressed his leg down harder and was surprised when Luffy's stomach just flattened and stretched to accommodate it. I don't think I said anything to offend you directly. You think wrong. Now apologize. Luffy's arm shot out, stretching slightly and clipping the side of Higuma's jaw. Well well. What have we here? A rubber human? I could sell her to the circus. He lifted his foot off of Luffy and she threw another punch before he kicked her in the stomach and placed his foot on her head. Might make a lot of money for this one. Wait please. Let the girl go. I beg you. The mayor yelled from behind them. Higuma turned to see Makino standing behind the mayor, a worried expression on her face. He bent himself down onto his knees and bowed his head. I don't know what she has done and I don't want to fight over it. I'll pay whatever you ask, so please let her go. While the oldest generation may know how the world works better than us all, I'm sorry but this kid already made me angry. Nothing can save her now. He brought his sword up high, as if preparing to stab Luffy right through her heart. It's your fault, you rotten old man, she insulted him again. I've decided. I'm not going to sell you, I'll just kill you. No, don't, both Makino and the mayor yelled. I was wondering why no one came to greet us at the port. Both Makino and the mayor turned slightly to see Shanks standing between them, hat bent low over his eyes. Pirates, so now you're showing your sad faces. Have you been spending all this time scrubbing the village? Said Higuma, but Shanks ignored him and glanced down at Luffy. Luffy, didn't you say your punches are like pistols? Shut up. I suggest you leave right now, Higuma continued, angry at being annoyed. Come any closer and I might have to open fire on you cowards. Of course, I'll take out the little girl first. Higuma threatened Shanks, digging the point of his sword into Luffy's back. Shanks took a step forward and one of Higuma's men appeared, pointing a gun at his head. He said not to move, pirate. Do you want me to blow your head off? He spat on the ground at the last sentence and the surrounding bandits began to chuckle. Shanks just stood calmly, sliding his eyes to the side to stare at the bandit. Would you risk your life? He asked seriously, huh? Now that you've drawn your pistol, are you willing to use it? What the hell are you talking about? The man looked at Shanks as if the pirate captain was a nutcase. I'm saying that guns are not for threats. They're for action. Before the bandit could answer him, Lucky Roo appeared, his own gun drawn and shot the bandit in the head, killing him instantly, his free hand still holding a leg of meat. Makino, the mayor, and Luffy gasped in surprise and horror at the fact that the man was dead, and Luffy was awestruck that no one had seen Lucky Roo move. The bandits seethed and shouted at the sudden attack. You're dead men, these guys fight dirty. Dirty? Who do you guys think we are anyway? Usopp scoffed, placing his gun over his shoulder. What, you guys think we're a bunch of saints or something? Ben chuckled. You guys are dealing with a real group of pirates, so let me tell you something, bandits. You can spray me with alcohol or douse me with food. Hell, if I get spit on, I'll just laugh it off, but I won't forgive anyone who hurts a friend of mine. That's where I draw the line, said Shanks, his voice going dark with anger. Luffy couldn't believe it, that Shanks would risk his life for his crew and for her. She felt tears coming on but quickly blinked them back. She needed to be strong for Shanks. Ha ha ha, won't forgive me? Ha ha, lousy pirates, kill them all, men, Higuma yelled with a chuckle. The bandits charged at the pirates with their swords ready, screaming the whole way. Ben stepped up next to Shanks and turned to look at his captain. Let me deal with this, captain. I've got it. Without even breaking a sweat, Ben charged forward and used his rifle like a club, knocking out any bandit who got too close to him. In only a matter of seconds, Ben was the only one left standing, idly smoking a cigarette. Don't overestimate yourselves, bandits, he muttered quietly. You want to fight us? Bring at least a warship. Higuma was shocked to see that his men had all been beaten by one guy. He had never seen such strength in a human before. Luffy just stared on in shock, barely recognizing the laughing, joking people she had made friends with. Wait, please, it was a kid who started it, Higuma panicked. Didn't you say you're a wanted man with 8 million berry on your head? Shanks countered coldly. Higuma flinched and then he threw a smokescreen bomb on the ground, causing the pirates to cover their eyes with a curse. When the smoke finally cleared, Higuma was nowhere in sight and Luffy was gone too. Luffiko, oh no, I let that guy take her. What are we gonna do? Shanks panicked, looking around quickly. Captain, calm down. Let's not freak out and let's find her, Lucky Roo interrupted, trying to calm his captain. Everyone spread out to cover more ground and Shanks sent out a silent prayer that nothing happened to the little girl he saw as a daughter. In the middle of the ocean, Higuma had made a clean getaway, stolen a small boat and captured Luffy as his hostage. He now stood in the boat, pointing his blade threateningly at Luffy, who was curled on the other side of the boat. "Haha, your friends will never find me here." Higuma laughed, taunting her. "Damn it. Stay the hell away from me, you dumb-ass idiot. I really hope you die," said Luffy. "Hey, yes, I know, but now you're the one who's gonna die. I told you what would happen when you made me angry." He walked slowly forward so the boat wouldn't flip, ready to kill the girl. Luffy had no idea what to do now. She didn't want to die. She had so much to do, so much to live for. She had a dream that needed to be fulfilled. She couldn't die now, she just couldn't. Once Higuma got close to her, he lifted his sword with a menacing look on his face, prepared to strike her down. Luffy screamed, her eyes closing, and tried to throw herself backwards, away from the sword, and ended up tumbling off the back of the boat and into the water. She tried to stay afloat, but it was like her own body was pulling her down. She felt herself getting tired and was barely able to keep her head above the water. A loud splash echoed in front of her and she cracked open her eyes to see the large Sea King, guardian of the island, staring down at Higuma's tiny boat as if seeing a snack. Luffy tried to yell, but she only ended up swallowing more seawater and could only watch helplessly as Higuma turned around in time to see the monster's large jaws close around him. Then the monster turned its eyes to Luffy, watching the half-conscious girl curiously before charging towards her. She let out one last scream and suddenly, a large arm was there, pulling her back against a warm chest. "Get lost," Shanks hissed darkly, glaring at the giant Sea King. Luffy watched in shock as the Sea King's eyes widened before the giant eel-like creature dove back into the water and began to swim away. Shanks sighed with relief and shifted his one-arm hold on Luffy, pulling her closer against him. She clutched her, sobbing, afraid that if she let go, Shanks would disappear. "Thank you, Luffy. Makino told us how you stuck up for us at the bar. I'm so proud of you. Willing to stick up for your friends and put yourself on the line." Shanks spoke softly, trying to reassure the small girl, but it only resulted in more tears. "Hey, don't cry, you're a big girl now." "But Shanks," she sobbed. "Your arm." Shanks' left arm was completely gone, bitten off by the Sea King that had tried to eat her. Because of her, he would never use his left arm again. Because of her, Shanks was hurt. Guilt, sorrow, and grief overtook her. "I'm sorry," she cried. "Lou, sweetheart, it's just an arm. I've got another one. I'm just glad you're all right." He smiled sadly, as she continued to cry. "Thank God," he thought, closing his eyes with relief. "Thank God I made it in time." After what felt like hours floating there, Shanks heard the sounds of rowing and cracked his eyes open to see Ben quickly making his way towards them, a relieved expression on his face. "What took you so long?" Shanks joked, passing a now unconscious Luffy up to his first mate before using his one remaining arm to pull himself ungracefully into the small boat. Ben's eyes widened in shock at the blood dripping from Shanks' body, but he didn't say anything, just sat Shanks up in the boat and began to paddle back to shore. "Ben," Shanks whispered, holding out his arm towards his first mate. Ben nodded in understanding and quickly handed over the little girl resting in his lap, setting her gently in Shanks' embrace. "She's okay, Captain. Just exhausted. We need to get you looked at." "I'll be fine," Shanks chuckled, placing a soft kiss on Luffy's head. "I'm just glad I made it in time." After a week of rest and recuperation, Shanks had begun to make a full recovery. Little Luffiko had been with him every step of the way, refusing to leave the pirate captain for very long. Shanks had begun to tease her again, and before long, it was time for them to set out again. The next day, the townsfolk watched as Shanks' crew loaded the last of their new supplies on their ship, laughing and singing with each other. They bid the townsfolk farewell and were wished a safe trip in return. Shanks was the last to board the ship, kneeling on the harbor in front of Luffy, smiling as she tried to fight back a pout. "So you're leaving?" Luffy sighed. "Yeah, it was a nice extended vacation, but it's time to part ways. I bet you'll miss me, huh?" he teased. Shanks still wore his usual clothing but had added a black cape to hide his missing arm. "Yeah, but this time it's different. I won't beg you to take me with you cause I'm going to be a pirate all on my own," Luffy declared, pointing her finger at Shanks. The red-haired pirate stuck out his tongue, mocking her like a child would. "I wouldn't take you with me anyway. You'll never make it as a pirate. Deep down though he was happy. Even after all that had happened, his little girl was still the same. No, I will make it as a pirate, she shouted. I'll gather the most strongest crew that's better than yours. And I'll find the greatest treasure of them all, the One Piece, and I'll be the first ever queen of the pirates. Most of the crew stopped their jobs to stare at the small 7-year-old girl in shock. It was her craziest declaration yet, but it was also her most profound one. Hey, you think you can outshine us? Said Shanks, raising one of his eyebrow. Luffy stared at the ground, embarrassed, refusing to look up at her role model, and then Shanks removed his hat and plopped it gently on her head. In that case, I'll leave this hat to you. It means more to me than anything in the world, so you better take good care of it. You hear me? He tilted the brim down over her face to hide his own watering eyes and stood up before turning to walk towards his ship. Luffy stood there in shock. Shanks had given her his favorite hat. She was honored and happy and sad at the same time. I won't let you down, Shanks, she thought. After they finally finished packing, Shanks gave the order to unfurl the sails and ship of the Red Hair Pirates began to sail away. The villagers stood on the dock, waving goodbye until the ship was out of sight. Luffy stood next to Makino, clutching the straw hat to her chest and waving to Shanks, tears flowing freely down her cheeks as she remembered his last sentence to her. I want you to bring this hat back to me someday, in good condition, and only once you've become the queen of the pirates. That's our promise, Lou. End flashback asterisk. As she finished her story, Luffy smiled, a bright, happy smile that had Zoro staring at the young woman. She took her hat off with one hand and stared at it fondly, remembering her promise to her role model, her idol, her inspiration, her father figure. Hey, Luffy, don't drop that again if it's so important, Zoro huffed, crossing his arms over his chest and looking away from his new captain. She smiled at him and placed it back on her head with a laugh. It is, thank you again, Zoro. I'm so hungry it's killing me. He groaned for what had to be the 100th time, ignoring Luffy's praise. It was just his job, after all. She laughed and leaned her head back to stare up at the blue sky before blinking. I think that's a bird up there. Maybe I can catch it. Go for it, Captain. Zoro encouraged, not really paying attention. With a nod, Luffy hooked her hands onto the wooden poles at the top of the sail. Gum gum rocket. She launched upwards towards the bird, and for a moment it looked like she had caught it, but then Zoro looked closer and saw that the bird had grabbed her tightly in one of its claws and was quickly carrying her off. Ah! Zoro, help! What the hell? Get back here, you overgrown bird brain, and give me back my captain. He rode as quickly as his arms would allow him, trying to catch up with the bird, not realizing the statement he had just made. In the middle of nowhere, the tightrope walking Funan bros that has been tricked by the orange-haired girl had been drifting for a long while with no end in sight when they suddenly spotted a small boat heading their way. Hey, wait, over here! Men overboard! Men overboard! One shouted, waving his arms. Great, that's just what I need, Zoro sighed, not slowing in his rowing. I can't stop now. You'll just have to jump in, he yelled back, continuing his journey. The three quickly grabbed on before he could ram them, trying to pull themselves up against the harsh current. Wow, I'm impressed that you made on board, he muttered under his breath. Are you trying to kill us? They yelled at him together, and then one of them stood up, drawing his sword and pointing it at the green-haired man. Stop the boat. We're members of Buggy the Pirate's crew, so the boat is ours now. Bonk bang blow, hee hee hee. We're sorry. One of the pirates bowed to Zoro while the other two sat behind him, rowing the boat. They all had sizable lumps on their heads from where Zoro had easily beaten them and were now rowing the boat as an apology. We had no idea you were the great pirate hunter Zoro. Please don't kill us. Great, Zoro hissed. Thanks to you three idiots, I lost sight of her. Oh, I didn't know you had a girlfriend, Mr. Roronoa, sir. She's not my girlfriend, you morons, Zoro yelled with a look that could frighten sea kings. A tiny blush crossed his face, but despite that he still looked menacing. Why yes, sir, they stuttered in fright. Zoro looked up at the sky to see if he could spot Luffy and the bird anywhere, but knowing her, she'd probably try to pull something off as soon as she saw land. He silently hoped she was alright, then mentally slapped himself for thinking so mushy. He distantly heard the three idiots talking about some girl that tricked them and stole their boat and treasure. In his mind, that made them more than idiots. To be fooled by such a lame trick, then he heard them mention Captain Buggy. Huh, so who's this Buggy person? Zoro asked. You've never heard of 3 yelled, shocked that the famous East Blue Hunter had never heard of Buggy. Nope, Zoro answered in uncaring tone. To him, that had to be the most ridiculous name he had ever heard. Buggy the Clown. What kind of pirate's name is that? Then one of the pirates replied. He is the most ruthless pirate in the East Blue. No one in their right mind would dare go against him, and he's eaten one of the devil fruits. Above everything else, he is truly one terrifying man. In Orangetown, a once peaceful town on an East Blue island, things were hectic. Buggy the Clown had recently caused havoc in the town, wrecking buildings and taking control of the main streets. The civilians had been forced to flee to the other side of the island because they were too weak to stand against the pirates. The streets were quiet for the moment, until a mysterious and familiar girl slid around a corner, running from her life from a group of 3 men dressed like circus performers. Give us back or else, one shouted, raising his sword angrily. We just stole that and now this girl stole it from us, another whined. She's gonna pay. The girl spared a glance back and grinned smugly, feeling the chart of the Grand Line pressed securely against her stomach, under her shirt. It had almost been too easy, now she just had to get away from these guys. If we don't get that chart back, our captain won't be too happy. Yeah, he'll kill us with his devil fruit powers. On top of the town hall building, there was a large tent with Buggy's flag on top. Inside sat Captain Buggy, hiding himself from plain sight and silently waiting for the crew he had sent out to recover his chart. He appeared calm on the outside, but those who knew him could see that he was seething with anger. Captain Buggy, I spotted something high in the sky above the port. One of his crew spoke when he spotted a giant bird thing in the distance. Well, shoot it down. The girl continued to run, still finding no opportunity to lose the 3 pirates when a powerful explosion from one of Buggy's cannons echoed through the streets. The girl and her pursuers all stopped to look up, wondering what the cannon was shooting at. There seemed to be someone in the sky falling right towards them. As the figure got closer, they could tell it was a girl. Ah, Zoro! She screamed as she fell. She landed with a loud bang on a pile of crates near Nami, causing smoke and debris to surround them all. What the hell was that? The girl asked in surprise. Is that? A girl fell out from the sky, one of the pirates said uncertainly. Don't be stupid, that's impossible, another hissed. Damn it! Why does this always happen to me? As the smoke cleared, the Orangeette and the pirates gasped in surprise to see that it had actually been a girl that fell out of the sky. A young and pretty girl who climbed easily out of the rubble and brushed away dust from her hair and clothes. That was awesome. She laughed, stretching her arms above her head. Huh? I wonder what happened to Zoro? The circus comes to Orangetown. Being a puppet of thoughts of others, my weakness, fate, it does uncover. Make the truth to shine some light, the lies prefer, they're addictive bright. Try to do what others feel, their merciless hearts, similar, steal, being subdued by mental aggravation, your only drive thirst and desperation. Left by yourself with pitiful meal, your closest friend's darkness, starvation, by Nick Corsantia. The Orangeette could hardly believe that the small girl had fallen out of the sky without a scratch. When she stared closer, she remembered that this girl had been on Alvida's ship when she was stealing that treasure earlier. Talk about coincidence. And then she came up with an idea. Man, I'm so hungry, Luffiko moaned, rubbing her stomach absently. Oh boss, thank goodness you're here to save me. The Orangeette pulled out her happy, hopeful look to her boss, while Luffy stared at the girl with confusion and blinked. Who are you? Luffy had no idea that this girl had just pulled her into a bit of predicament, and she hadn't yet taken notice of the 3 pirates that had been chasing the Orangeette. They tightened their grip on their swords when she called Luffy, boss. But before Luffy could repeat her question, the Orangeette had already made a break for it. They're all yours, boss. Have fun. Then she disappeared into the alleyway. Luffiko scratched at the part of her hair visible under her hat in bewilderment, not really understanding what was going on. Hey, that girl is getting away, said pirate number 1. Don't worry, we got her boss now, said pirate number 2. Yeah, you're right. The last chuckled before stepping closer to Luffy. You're in trouble, girlie. You shouldn't have let your crony friend escape. Luffy turned around at the man's words to stare at the three really ugly-looking pirates, still confused of what's going on. Suddenly she heard another rumble in her tummy, and she sighed before asking them. "Do you guys know where I can find a good restaurant? I'm starved." "Food is least of your worries now," pirate number 1 commented as he darted forward, punching Luffy hard in the face and knocking her hat off of her head. She gasped in shock and raised one hand to her head, the other shooting forward and punching the guy back, knocking him unconscious with one blow. She caught her hat and put it calmly back on her head. "You idiots better keep your hands off my hat. You bitch." The remaining two glared and charged at her, hefting their swords. And as for the orange-haired girl, she was climbing quietly up onto the rooftop, wanting to see what had happened to that girl she used to escape. "I wonder if that girl survived," she mumbled, feeling a little guilty over leaving her there. Once she reached the edge of the roof though, she gasped in shock. All three of the buggy goons had been completely knocked down and the raven-haired girl was still standing, completely unharmed. "Wow, you're really strong for a young girl," she said, impressed by the girl that had taken down 3 pirates all by herself. Luffy glanced up when she heard a voice and spotted the same girl from earlier, leaning over the edge of the rooftop. The Orangeette jumped down when she noticed the coast was clear and walked up to Luffy. "Even though they have swords, you managed to beat them up with your bare hands." She hadn't actually seen Luffy fight, but it didn't appear that the raven-haired girl used any weapons. "Hey, you're that girl who set me up. Who are you?" Her tone didn't sound mad, but she tilted her head, curious as to why the girl did that. "I'm a talented thief who steals strictly from pirates. The name's Nami," she replied. "Hey, you want to team up with me?" "A thief? No way," Luffy laughed, sticking out her tongue. With that said, she stepped past Nami, glancing around for any signs of somewhere to get something to eat. "Hey, hold on. At least think about it for 1 minute." Nami ran after the girl to make her change her mind. Before Nami could open her mouth again, a vicious growl came from Luffy's stomach, making them both stop. "Ooh, I'm so hungry," Luffy groaned, trying to rub her belly in a calming manner, as if reassuring it she would find food soon. Nami felt slightly sorry for the girl and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Why don't you come with me and I'll get you something to eat?" She stumbled back slightly in shock when Luffy suddenly jumped and gave Nami her signature D-grin. "Really? Thank you so much," she shouted happily, and Nami just sighed in exasperation at the weird girl. Back at the tent, one unlucky crew member had just delivered the bad news to Captain Buggy. He prayed to his god to spare his soul from his cruel captain who could easily kill him instantly. "So you're telling me that those buffoons haven't caught the thief or gotten my map back?" Buggy hissed from inside his tent. "And not yet, BB, but they should be here soon with the girl and the map." "SS sir," said the fat and bearded man. "Now, explain to me how in the world she managed to get her hands on that chart, huh?" His voice was low with anger and the fat man backed away in fear. He knew how important that chart was. It would get them into the Grand Line without any trouble, but it was stolen and Captain Buggy wasn't so happy about that. "How are we supposed to go the Grand Line without the chart in our possession?" The captain's blood was boiling with every minute that passed and he felt like it would burst at any moment if the chart wasn't returned to him soon. "I don't know, sir. The map was just sitting out, plain as the nose on your face." "What did you say?" Buggy cringed, his glare deepening and eyes flashing. The pirate suddenly realized what he just said and quickly tried to come up with reason to save himself. I mean it was easy for her to find and take it. Well, the keyword was, try." "Did you say something about my nose?" Buggy tossed the chair that he had been sitting on and glared heatedly at the man who had mocked him about his nose. He walked out of the tent, finally exposing himself to the bright sunlight. He looked just how people described him, like a clown. He was Buggy the Clown. Even though his name sounded ridiculously stupid, he wasn't a clown that played practical jokes, made funny faces or juggled and whatnot. No, Buggy was one of the fiercest pirates with a bounty of 15 million berry. Though his clown-like attire and makeup could fool you, if he was made fun of in the slightest, then he would take his sweet time exacting revenge. He leaned down to glare at the fat man, bringing their faces close and letting their noses touch. "Are you trying to tell me that you found my nose funny? Is my nose amusing?" No sir, you misunderstood." "Oh no, you were quite clear." The fat bearded man trembled under the menacing gaze of his captain. He tried to back away but he only ended up tripping and landing on his butt. He continued to try and escape, wriggling backwards. The rest of the crew were too chicken to help their crewmate in need because their captain would kill anyone who tried to interfere. As the fat man tried to get away, he suddenly felt a tight grip wrapping around his throat. His captain was using his devil power on him, and now that he was trapped under Buggy's wrath, he began to choke and gag as the force around his throat continued to tighten. As it became even stronger, he was lifted off the ground and began moving towards Captain Buggy. Buggy smiled menacingly as he approached. He always enjoyed tormenting his own men for fun. "Tell me, who am I?" he asked sweetly. "Cap. Toin, Bu. GGY. "And what happened if someone defies me?" he asked again. "Flashy, death awaits, them. Please, forgive, me." Then Buggy released his power and let him drop to the ground, allowing the pirate to take in deep lungfuls of air and massage his sore throat. "Quit your groveling. I'll overlook your slip-up and forgive you this time." Then he twirled around to walk back to his tent, but before that he entered, he paused and said, "But you better get that chart BGA'n or else." "Yes, sir, Captain Buggy, sir." His crew shouted with a salute to Captain Buggy and quickly spread out to find the girl in the chart. Back with Luffy and Nami, in Nami's living room, Luffy was eating a large burger. Bite after bite, enjoying the juicy and salty taste, while Nami sat on the edge of the table watching her. "So, do you live in this house all by yourself?" the she-pirate asked before taking another bite of her burger. "This isn't my house, I'm just staying for the time being. Everyone in this town ran off when Captain Buggy showed up." Nami gestured around her with a sigh. "Oh, so you're just a petty thief. How rude. I only steal from people who deserve it, pirates, so don't compare me to some S-bag, petty thief," Nami hissed, feeling insulted by Luffy's statement, a girl she barely knew. Luffy swallowed the last bit of her burger and said innocently, "A thief is thief as far as I'm concerned." Then Nami looked out the window and seriousness swirled in her eyes. "My goal is to earn 100 million berry. No matter how hard it is or how long it takes." Luffy scrutinized Nami carefully. It seemed like a lot of berries for one person, but there was something in the girl's eyes that said there was more to the story. Why do you need so much money?" Luffy asked. "That a secret, though with the chart of the Grand Line 100 million is now a definite possibilities." She waved the chart for Luffy to see before quickly tucking it back under her striped shirt. "Wait, a chart? So you must be a navigator, right?" she asked. "I'm the most skilled navigator you're ever likely to meet," Nami said with a smug smile. Luffy smiled brightly and did a small internal dance. "Oh wow, that's perfect. You should join my crew. I've been looking to recruit a navigator cause I don't know how and Zoro always gets lost." "Really? Yeah, you could be our newest crew member." She held her arms up in exhilaration, happy at the thought of finally getting a navigator, but her smile faded slightly when Nami frowned and said, "No." Luffy blinked at Nami, asking her in silent question, and the Orangeette sighed and continued. "Let me guess, you're a pirate, right?" She spit the word out with distaste, but Luffy was completely oblivious to her tone and her grin returned to her face. "Yes, I am. I took a solemn promise. I promised the guy who gave me this hat that I would form the best crew and become the first ever queen of the pirates." Luffy took off her hat as she spoke and stared at it reverently. Angry, Nami smacked the table and glared at the younger girl. "There is nothing in this world that I despise more than pirates," she hissed, voice rising to a shout. "I only like money and tangerines." Luffy blinked in surprise at the last item. Did she say tangerines? "Come on. Be our navigator. It'll be fun," she whined, trying to persuade Nami with a smile. "I said no." Luffy sighed in resignation. "It's your loss." She then proceeded to eat the remaining bread buns on the table while Nami watched the town in silence. She spotted two of the Buggy pirates and quickly hid, turning to listen into their conversation. She overheard them mention her and the stolen chart, and also that the entire Buggy crew was all over the place, making sure that there was no chance of escape. As they rounded another corner, out of her hearing range, she frowned. "I gotta think of something, and fast." Then she looked at Luffy still eating and smirked. "You know, maybe I will consider joining your crew, but only if you agree with some certain conditions," said Nami, faking her smile. "Really? Alright, I'll do anything." Well, then I want you to come with me to pay a visit to Captain Buggy. But first, then she brought out a rope and swiftly tied it around Luffy's chest and torso, tying her hands behind her back as well. Luffy looked at the ropes then back up at Nami. Why did you tie me up? The rope is for appearances. It's how Buggy's crew meets new members. Nami explained, thinking up a quick lie. Oh okay. Come on then, I've been looking forward to meeting other pirates. Luffy began to hum excitedly, rocking back and forth as if she was a child getting her Christmas presents. Just hold your horses, I don't know what the big deal is anyway. Nami huffed, standing up and beginning to walk towards Buggy's lair, Luffy being dragged behind her. What? Buggy yelled with so much fury and anger that it shook the ground under him like an earthquake. You let the thief escape. The three he yelled at were the same goons that had been chasing Nami before being knocked out by Luffy. Now they cowered in fear as their captain howled above them like an enraged sea king. Please, forgive us, Captain Buggy, the three begged in unison. I have never seen a more pathetic group than you three. Time to die. The group screamed helplessly, but before Captain Buggy could kill them with his devil fruit power, one of his crew called, say that he had important news. What is it now? He asked, annoyed, wanting to kill the worthless rats, who sighed in relief at the stay of execution. The girl that stole our chart is back, but with a prisoner. What? Buggy screeched in disbelief. He turned to stare as the orange-haired girl approached his tent, dragging a younger raven-haired girl behind her, tied in ropes. Buggy's crew were confused at the girl's return and wondered who the other girl was. The group that had been chasing Nami got angry that because of her they had almost died at the hands of Buggy the Merciless. That's her. That the sneaky thief that stole the chart. They were surprised even more when the girl pushed her prisoner onto the ground hard, surprising Luffy and Buggy both. Nami felt vaguely bad for doing that to Luffy, but business was business. I captured the thief, Captain Buggy the Clown, and here is your chart back, Nami said, calmly holding out the chart. Not that I don't appreciate this, but why the sudden change of heart, little girl? Buggy asked carefully, conscious that she might try to trick him again like last time. Nami handed the chart to Buggy, who gladly took it. I had another fight with my boss and I just can't take it anymore, so I tricked her. I tied her up and have come to join your crew. Nami smiled cheerfully. Buggy's eyes flickered with rage and the crew flinched in terror at the uncontrollable anger on his face. Captain Buggy looks madder than before. He's going to use his devil powers. Really? Luffy was surprised to hear that this clown guy was a devil user like her, and watched curiously as Buggy's anger melted away and he began to laugh loudly. You're fed up, huh? I must admit you're an amusing girl. I like you. Of course you can join my crew. Then he laughed again. Nami was stunned. She hadn't seen this coming. He was acting like he had completely forgotten that she stole his chart from him. Nevertheless, he had made her a part of his crew right away, so her plan had worked and she put on her best fake smile. I successfully infiltrated them. Pirates are so dumb and easy to manipulate, Nami thought disdainfully. Then Buggy ordered the three of his crew who had failed to capture the thief to put Luffy in a cage. So, still tied up, Luffy was thrown in a very small square cage. Guys, why I am in the cage? She asked calmly, but she was ignored by Buggy and his crew, who were now chuckling evilly with the girl who had become a new member of Buggy Pirates. It's a great day to be a pirate. Girl, what do you call yourself? Buggy asked her. I'm Nami. Ha ha. Then let's have a welcome party to our new friend, Nami. Let's celebrate. Buggy threw his hands up gleefully and his crew couldn't deny such a request. The party started with the biggest feast they had ever seen, with hundreds of bottles of sake to go with it. They ate and drank in very unusual ways. Some drank straight from the large barrel, some drank 8 mugs of sake in one go. The same went for food, and then there are also performances like those you would see in the circus. Chair dancing, juggling, icking and many more. What's wrong? Buggy asked Nami, handing her a mug. We're throwing this party in your honor, so eat up, he commanded. Thanks for the party, Captain Buggy. Nami smiled, but then her smile turned into a smirk. I'll just keep my eyes peeled for a chance to take back my chart and maybe swipe all of Buggy's treasure while I'm at it. As she formulated her plan in her head, the party continued for who knows how long. Buggy laughed and watched the spectacular party taking place, and the look in his eyes was wide and crazy as he thought of a perfect way to make his party more wild. This is such a flashy party, now listen up. Men, it's time to prepare the buggy ball. The crew's cheers doubled in volume as they brought out their cannon. They secured the cannon to the ground to keep it at bay, and then a small-sized clown pirate who wore a yellow sleeveless shirt and a yellow and purple striped cone hat carried forward Buggy's buggy ball. The cannonball was painted in red with Buggy's Jolly Roger engraved on it, and the pirate put the cannonball inside the cannon ready and loaded. Nami had no idea what these pirates were up to. What are you going to do with that thing? She timidly asked, but regretted her question when she saw the sinister look on Buggy's face. Just observe and be amazed at the might of the buggy ball. Light it, he ordered. The man lit the cannon and aimed it at the empty houses of Orangetown. Luffy and Nami watched in horror while Captain Buggy and his crew smiled darkly as the cannon shot the buggy ball, destroying 20 houses in a row in a massive explosion. At the port, Zoro and the 3 cronies he had rescued arrived just in time to witness the explosion that destroyed multiple houses in one shot. Now that was one heck of an explosion, Zoro whistled, mildly impressed. It looks like one of the captain's beloved buggy balls, one of the pirates said. Buggy balls? He smirked, that was a terrible name. Back at Buggy's tent, Captain Buggy and his crew laughed cruelly at the dramatic bang that echoed across the town, signaling that another part of Orangetown had been destroyed. Nami couldn't take her eyes away from the dreadful sight. She had never seen such a powerful blast like that before. With that kind of eruption, they could destroy an entire island with only 2 shots. That was flashy. With these buggy balls and my devil fruit powers, I should have no problem conquering the Grand Line. Right, Nami? He asked his new crewmate. Oh yes, of course. Nami knew she did not want to make Captain Buggy mad, or he'd probably use her as a target practice for his buggy ball. But it's my destiny to conquer the Grand Line, Luffy yelled from her seat in the cage. Buggy turned around and shot an angry glare at the annoying pest who had disturbed his enjoyment, but Luffy wasn't finished yet. And then I'm going to be the first queen of the pirates. Shut up already, idiot, Nami shouted, slight worry in her tone, and Buggy chuckled. I can see why you're sick of her, Nami. Yeah, I know, she never takes anything seriously, thinks her life is like big game. She's such a kid. The navigator sighed. I see, then how about I give you a buggy ball to blow away your old boss? It'll be a great opportunity for you to prove your loyalties to your new captain. Men? Nami cringed in fright at the disturbing look on Buggy's face. It was that of a madman, and now she was nervous that she would be forced to kill Luffy with that buggy ball until the younger girl was nothing but ashes. The buggy pirates moved the cannon and aimed it at Luffy, but the raven-haired girl didn't look the least bit scared that there was a loaded cannon ready to blast her to oblivion. Nami's mind was racing. She needed to think of something fast before it was too late. That all right, Captain, we don't need to finish her off quite yet. Let's get back to the welcoming party and have fun instead. She tried to persuade Buggy, trying to save Luffy, but the look on Buggy's face told her that there was nothing she could do. This is my idea of fun, Buggy said with a crazed look. He gave Nami a match to light up the cannon, and stood back. Nami glanced at the matches in her hand and then back up to where Luffy sat calmly. She didn't know what to do, and Buggy's crew was cheering her on, which made the matter worse. If I don't shoot, I'll be killed, but if I do shoot, then I'm no better than these pirates. Her mind was racing to find a way to get out of this situation, but none of her plans would work now. It was pointless. Luffy stared at Nami blankly, who was sweating and shaking in distress. What's the matter? Your hands are shaking, the pirate girl said cockily. Nami glanced down at her hands and then back up to the smirking girl. That's what happens when you take on pirates with a half-ass resolve, Luffy continued. Resolve? To do what? To kill someone like it's nothing? Is that the pirate's resolve? Nami screamed, clenching her fists. No, you gotta be willing to risk your own life, Luffy stated calmly. Nami gasped when she saw the look in her eyes, those eyes that reminded her of. Then someone grabbed the box of matches from her limp hand and she jumped in surprise, seeing one of Buggy's crew members. Here, you chick. Don't be such a tease and let me show you how to light the cannon. Before the pirate could strike the match, Nami had her 3-part wooden staff that she kept on her right thigh put together, turning it into a 6-foot bow staff. She smacked the pirate hard across the face, causing him to drop to the ground unconscious. Captain Buggy and his crew gaped at Nami's actions while Luffy was awed at her fast reflexes. "Nami, what is the meaning of this?" Buggy asked, looking very pissed. Nami quickly realized what she had done and quickly bowed towards Captain Buggy. "I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me," she apologized. "Now you're sorry? Just shoot her already," Buggy barked. "So, now you want to save me?" Luffy was confused at Nami's actions. First Nami betrayed her and now she tried to save her and now she was on his side again. Talk about weird. "Don't be stupid, I'm not doing this for you. You idiot, I just don't want to lower myself to the level of inhumane pirates. Pirates took the life of a very dear person from me and I'll never be one of them." Her voice wavered as if she was about to cry. "Oh, I see." Then Luffy heard something hissing, and she looked up to see that the cannon had been lit up by the pirate before Nami had knocked him out. "Ah! Nami, the fuse." Nami turned to see that the fuse had indeed been lit. "So you think pirates are inhuman filth, is that right? Get her men." 4 of Buggy's crew rushed in with their blades ready. Nami saw it and quickly swung her bow staff to hit them, but the 4 jumped and tried to strike with their swords again. But Nami was too quick and blocked their attacks. Then she threw her staff at the pirates and turned to sprint to the cannon. Nami panicked slightly. She didn't have water to douse the fuse, so she had to come up with a different method. She grabbed the fuse with both hands, hissing in pain as it burned her palm, but she refused to let go until the flame had gone out. Luffy couldn't believe that Nami had endangered her hands to save her and still hadn't let go. She was very daring. Nami hung onto the fuse until the flame had finally died down before sighing in relief and letting her hands drop. "I did it." "Nami, look out, behind you." She heard Luffy's alarmed yell and turned to see a group of pirates charging her with swords. She closed her eyes waiting for death, her arms rising futilely to protect her. When no pain came, she cracked open her eyes hesitantly to see a man with shocking green hair had stopped them by using the sheaths of 2 of his swords. "Hey now, it's not nice of you guys to gang up on a defenseless girl." Even without the hair, Luffy would recognize that voice anywhere. "Zoro!" she exclaimed happily. Nami stared at Zoro, seeing the swordsman almost of his name, but he didn't smile. He just turned a glaring face towards Nami. "Are you hurt?" Zoro asked. I said, "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, I think," Nami answered. Zoro nodded before pushing the pirates away and turning to look at Luffy. Nami saw Zoro's expression soften when he saw Luffy grinning at him, a mix of relief, anger, and mild irritation crossing his features. "That's just great," he sighed, hiding the relief he felt at seeing her alive. "First a giant bird snatched you and now you're in a cage. How did you get yourself in this situation?" He felt that he had a right to get irritated with her. She was always charging headfirst into things like this. Yeah, this is an interesting story actually." The girl chuckled happily, excitement at the possibility of seeing Zoro fight rising in her. As the duo spoke to each other, the pirates began to quiver at the mention of his name and the iconic bandana wrapped around his arm. "Wait, that's him. The great bounty hunter of the East Blue, Roronoa Zoro." The crew that she mentioned earlier was the pirate hunter, Zoro. What's going on here? Nami never would have imagined that Zoro was Luffy's crew member. That didn't make any sense at all. Why would a pirate hunter work under the command of a female pirate captain? Zoro didn't have time to deal with this, and frankly, he didn't want to, so he ignored the pirates around him and began to make his way over to Luffy's cage, intending to set her free. He had taken 3 steps when suddenly Captain Buggy spoke. "So, you're the Roronoa Zoro that I've heard so much about. If you're here for my head, you've got quite a struggle before you." "No, not interested. I gave up pirate hunting, I'm just here for the girl," Zoro replied in a bored tone. "But I'm interested though. Killing you would boost up my reputation." Buggy's tone suggested he was confident that he could take down Zoro. Luffy frowned at that. She knew Zoro couldn't be beaten that easily. She had seen her first mate fight and knew that she still hadn't seen his best yet. If he could defeat Captain Morgan with little effort, she didn't think that this clown guy stood much of a chance. "If you try, you'll die." Nami shivered at Zoro's look and at the dangerous edge to his voice when he addressed Buggy. They called him the Demon of East Blue, and the ice in his gaze made her think that the rumors were, for once, right. She was immensely thankful that the swordsman didn't know that she had been the one to let his captain get captured. She didn't want that anger directed at herself. Buggy, however, ignored the threat in his eyes and voice and drew 10 daggers out. 8 daggers in both hands between each finger and 2 attached to the ends of his shoes. "Oh, is that so?" Buggy taunted. Zoro sighed, this guy was getting to be annoying. "I tried to warn you, but oh well." The Buggy crew cheered on their captain, believing that he could win, and Buggy licked one of his blades as Zoro put his Wado Ichimonji between his teeth and readied his other 2 swords. Nami and Luffy watched from the sidelines, both staring intently at the 2 fighters, but Luffy knew Zoro. Her swordsman was the best and he could beat that stupid clown easily. She was actually a little disappointed that she wouldn't get to watch him fight for real. Zoro and Buggy faced each other, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Finally, Buggy charged forward, tired of waiting, and Zoro grinned. He had been waiting for the right moment to strike. Before Buggy could lay a scratch on him, Zoro had leapt from the ground and sliced straight through Buggy, cutting him in half. Nami turned away from the gruesome sight of what was left of Buggy as Zoro put his swords back in their sheaths. "That wasn't much of a fight now, was it?" he grumbled. "Oh wow, he's weak. Way to go, Zoro." Luffy cheered, awkwardly clapping her hands together despite the ropes wrapped around her wrists and arms. "Incredible," Nami breathed, and then all of a sudden Buggy's crew started to laugh. "Hey, why are they laughing?" asked Luffy, seemingly confused at the crew's actions. "Their captain is lying dead on the ground and yet they're still laughing, what's going on?" said Nami, slight disgust in her tone. "Hey, what's so funny anyway?" Unknown to Zoro, one of the dead Buggy's hands had risen, independent of its body, and had surged forward, one knife grasped in it. It stabbed Zoro through the back, on his right side, missing anything vital but causing a lot of pain. He let out a cry of pain as blood soaked through his shirt and down his haramaki, and he dropped to one knee in pain. "Zoro!" Luffy cried, struggling against the ropes holding her. Nami turned around and was shocked to see Buggy's hand and the rest of his body parts that had been cut off by Zoro were moving on their own. "Buggy's still alive." Then the hand that held the dagger pulled back out, making Zoro wince as the knife was removed from his side. What the hell?" he snarled, turning his head to watch as Buggy stood up, slowly reattaching his limbs to his body. "The Chop Chop fruit, it's the name of the devil fruit that I ate. I'm Chop Chop person and I can't be defeated by swords. Ha 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 ha." He laughed with glee and did a small victory dance as he rose. His limbs reattached themselves. "I always thought that devil fruits were just a story that pirates told." Nami was stunned to see a real-life devil fruit power, and Luffy clenched her teeth together, feeling her anger rise. "I didn't hit any vital origins, but that's a serious wound you got there, so I'm guessing that I'm the winner." Buggy laughed again along with his crew, and Zoro winced at another surge of pain shot through his right side. He shut his eyes and tried to breathe through the pain, one hand putting pressure against the wound. "Oh crap, if we don't do something quick they'll go and kill all 3 of us," Nami thought, eyes darting around the rooftop. "I let my guard down, that was a stupid mistake." Luffy's glare deepened at Zoro's confession. He did nothing wrong. She was mad at the pirates for laughing at Zoro, at Buggy for tricking him, and most of all for hurting him. She clenched her hands tightly as her anger finally boiled over and she screamed. Stabbing him in the back was a cowardly move. "You big nose." Everything went silent. Nami froze, angry at the stupid girl who had just called him the worst insult possible, and the crew around her just gasped in shock. "What the, you said? Who's got a big nose?" Buggy turned towards Luffy and threw the knife he still held in his hand. "Luffy!" Zoro yelled, forgetting the pain as he tried to stand, but it was too late. The knife was already thrown and he was too far away to do anything but watch. It went between the bars and seemed to slam right into her head, forcing her back. Zoro watched the cage, the hand against his wound tightening with worry. It couldn't have hit her, right? She had to have dodged that. Suddenly Luffy sat back up, the blade of the knife held between her teeth. She didn't look to be injured at all, and everyone was awestruck at the reflexes she had to catch something moving that fast without taking any damage. She glanced up from under her hat, and smirked at Buggy. "Hey, Buggy. I'm going to kick your ass right now." "Ha ha 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 ha. You? Kick my ass?" Strong words for a little girl, but no, I'm afraid all 3 of you are going to die here today by my own hands. So if you're going to do any ass kicking, you better do it soon, ha 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 ha. Buggy continued to laugh at Luffy's strong words. Damn it, if I wasn't in this condition I would give this guy a piece of my mind. He's too full of himself. Zoro silently cursed the clown captain for underestimating Luffy. The small captain let the knife drop from her mouth before bending her head back and laughing. Buggy and his crew stopped there laughing, watching the raven-haired girl, some wondering if she had cracked. I refuse to die, Zoro, run, Luffy ordered. What? Zoro stared at the ant. He wouldn't leave her here. You better have a really good plan or else we're all dead, so what are you guys going to do? Nami exclaimed. Luffy turned to stare at Zoro and smiled at him, communicating a silent message to which he replied with an arched brow. He smirked as she nodded. Even without words he knew almost instinctively what her plan was. I gotcha, he said while Nami just stared between the two of them with dismay. Nothing makes sense anymore. This is why I hate pirates. You fools, time to die. Buggy charged Zoro again, but the swordsman quickly unsheathed his swords and deflected the hits. He continued to repel every one of Buggy's strikes, but Buggy just smirked, thinking he had the upper hand. Suddenly, Zoro dove forward to slice him, missing when Buggy split his body in half to evade Zoro's strike. Your three-sword style has no effect on me. Buggy didn't finish as Zoro continued to run past him and towards the cannon, completely ignoring the pirate clown. Hey! Listen when I'm talking to you. Before Buggy could chase after him, Zoro ducked under the cannon and began to push it, attempting to flip it over. The injury on his side spurted blood as he struggled, and with a grunt of exertion he managed to move the cannon so that it was now pointing towards Buggy and his crew, who let out unmanly shrieks of dismay. Hurry, light it, he ordered Nami, panting slightly. What? Do it now? Nami nodded, understanding Luffy's plan now, and quickly found a match lying on the ground. Wait, this cannon is loaded with the Buggy ball. I can't die by my own ball. But his yell reached deaf ears as Nami lit the cannon once more, this time at Buggy, and Luffy snickered at the scared expression on the infamous Buggy the Clown's face. I can't believe you just did that, you ungrateful little girl. Wait, no. Stop. Stop it now, as he shouted in terror, his arms waving wildly in front of his face. The fuse reached its peak and the cannon fired, blasting Buggy and his crew off of the roof and out into the city. It wasn't until after the echoing explosion of the Buggy ball aimed at Buggy himself had receded did Nami shake herself out of her stupor and uncover her ears. She turned to scan the area for Zoro and was shocked to find that instead of taking cover like she had when the Buggy cannon had gone off, he had rushed straight for the cage Luffy had been encased in, and was now on his knees against the bars, talking softly with the girl within. Staring at them, Nami cautiously pushed herself to her feet, and after swiftly looking at the unconscious wreck of Buggy's crew and reassuring herself that they would not be getting up anytime soon, made her way over to Luffy's cage. Are you sure? She heard Zoro urgently mutter at the raven-haired girl as he used the knife Buggy had thrown at her to cut the ropes. Luffy just answered with a cheerful nod and a yosh, as the binds holding her hands came undone and she shook her numb hands with a grin. Finally reaching them, Nami made it just in time to watch as Zoro shoved his hands through the bars and grabbed Luffy's wrists, pulling the younger girl's body forward so he could examine her thoroughly. As Zoro lifted Luffy's arms robotically and trailed his fingers down them, Luffy giggled. Zoro, she whined, pulling one of her hands away, that tickles. Zoro, finally sure that Luffy hadn't been wrongly hurt in his absence, shook his head and sighed in relief, a small grin making its way to his face as he dropped Luffy's arms and reached out further to gently rest his hand against her head. Just making sure, he answered ruefully. But, Zoro, Luffy shot back. You're much more hurt than me, you gonna be okay? Her eyes darted over him in her own form of examination, pausing to stare at his injury with a frown. Zoro grinned at Luffy, ruffling the girl's untidy hair, causing her to let out an automatic protest and lean away. It's just a flesh wound, he passed it off easily. Bit of sleep later and I'll be fine. He gave Luffy a charming smile, one she had no trouble believing in. She, Luffy giggled again, before leaning forward and pecking the swordsman on his nose, causing the older man to blush slightly. He pulled Luffy's hat over her face and turned away with a huff, embarrassed. Nami suddenly had the feeling she was intruding on something private, and that if she was caught intruding on it, Zoro would personally kill her. Clamping her mouth shut to prevent the hysterical yelling she had been about to unleash, she turned her head away and sighed. You two psychos," she prodded, still staring intently at Buggy's pathetic and out-for-the-count crew, her hands on her hips. "Hello? Buggy's crew? Buggy? Will awaken at any minute, yeah?" At this, the two finally noticed her presence, and while Luffy turned to her with a grin as wide and cheerful as ever, Zoro regarded her with a suspicious and closed look of dislike. Nami immediately felt herself bristling at that look. She often used a similar look to clearly tell men where they stood with her and where they should stick it. To have such a look thrown so casually at her first she wasn't going to like this guy. At all. Didn't he have any respect for women? "Who's this?" Zoro asked rudely, staring at her as if assessing an enemy. "That's Nami," Luffy answered eagerly, reaching through the bars to latch onto Zoro's arm and shake the older man excitedly. "She's going to be our navigator." At this, Nami stiffened angrily. "Who says?" She sniffed haughtily. "I already told you, kid, I hate pirates." Luffy looked put out and slightly annoyed. "But I'm saying," she answered, as if that was all that mattered. Zoro started chuckling, glancing at Nami's infuriated glare with amusement. "Yeah, didn't you hear her?" he let out, grinning. "Luffy says." Nami actually stamped her foot, only slightly, before huffing. "You two are impossible," she accused. "First you're all so happy and casual about Buggy, an extremely dangerous pirate captain, then you're all crazy and ready to fight even after you've sustained serious injuries, and now this, acting like children." "Yeah, whatever," Zoro answered uninterested, turning away from her to start examining the cage for a way out. Luffy was completely preoccupied, humming her own little tune as she watched Zoro feel the cage bars. "I've already tried that," she offered Zoro helpfully, answering the half-formed and unspoken idea in his head. "But maybe with your swords." Zoro shook his head with a grunt of frustration. "With this injury, I don't have as much strength behind my swing," he ground out, sounding ashamed. "I won't be able to cut the bars like this." Nami shook her head at the two of them and glanced over at the unconscious Buggy. She should really grab what she could and get out of here now. It was how she did things. How she survived. But Luffy had really helped her. Twice, she couldn't just leave the girl and her green-headed buffoon here to die. Setting off with determined strides, the arguing of Luffy and Zoro faded behind her as she made her way toward Buggy. It only took her a few minutes to pilfer his collection of brass keys and figure out which one matched the cage's iron signature. By the time she trotted away from Buggy smugly, key in hand, Zoro had picked up the cage with Luffy in it and was now making his way down the hill. Nami's steps faltered, and her mouth fell open, key completely forgotten. "Holy crap," she muttered to herself, before taking off after the two insane pirates. "What are you doing?" she hissed, finally catching up to them, shocked at the amount of distance Zoro had covered in the short amount of time she had been away, especially with injuries like his. "I'm milking the cows," Zoro grunted sarcastically at her, shifting the cage awkwardly as he took another hard step. Luffy, who had drifted into a somewhat out-of-it daze, snapped to attention at the sound of Zoro's voice. "Huh? Cows?" she questioned, glancing around. "Where? I just had a really good burger earlier. Food too, Zoro." Zoro stumbled another few steps, pausing to catch his breath. "Sure, Captain," he said with a short grin that he aimed up at Luffy. "We'll have a big feast after all this." "Sweet. Are you crazy?" Nami tried again, shock driving her for an answer to his ridiculous and damaging behavior. "You'll kill yourself trying to lug that thing all the way through town." Zoro gave her a bland, annoyed look that clearly said bullshit. "There was no way I was gonna leave Luffy up there with those creeps," he spat out, struggling onwards. Nami slowed to a stop at that, finding it almost too hard to believe. Just how long had these two known each other? To go that far for the other, no questions asked. She found herself remembering that one moment in the fight, when Luffy had called out to the staggering, bleeding Zoro, and with one connected, knowing look, Zoro had gained reassurance, strength, confidence, and had known exactly what to do. Nami found herself marveling at their connection. It was, truly something beautiful. Something neither of them seemed to consciously notice yet still held close, as if protecting it. What kind of frickin' pirates were these strange two? Desperate situation. Beast Tamer Moji versus Luffy. The treasure of life. Life is a journey. A journey of time where a heart needs another to give it a shine. We're all on a journey with two paths to take, one that is right and the one that can break, with many a setback, we'll find hard to bear. It's love and true friendship that will help us to care for a heart that is lonely, can fill up with strain like a plant that can wither without sun and rain, so together when sharing, surely we'll find, it's the treasure of life that can give peace of mind, by Olive Walters. Captain Buggy sat up slowly, his body aching from the force with which he hit the cement ground. Somehow he had survived the blast from his own cannon, however, he was furious that the no-good pirate hunter Zoro had the gall to try and humiliate him. And those two girls were just as guilty, the witch, Nami, and that raven-haired idiot. Those three think they can mock me. Screw that. I consider that act of aggression as a declaration of war. He was muttering quietly to himself, planning all the ways he could drag out their deaths and make them flashy at the same time. A giant paw appeared in front of him and the clown pirate looked up before smirked gleefully. His first mate had arrived. There you are, Moji. Standing in front of him was a man with strangest looking hairstyle. It almost resembled a white polar bear and wrapped completely around his face. It was made even more lifelike by a pair of white bear ears, and he sat atop an enormous lion. He was known as Moji the Beast Tamer, second in command of the Buggy Pirates. I hope you won't mind if I take the pirate hunter's head, said Moji gruffly. He, be my guest. Zoro continued to lug the cage carrying Luffy until he could no longer see the tent that had housed Buggy and his pirates. The orange-haired girl who had helped them followed a few steps behind, nagging him the whole way. He wanted to continue going, to get as far away from that rooftop as he could, but suddenly his arms gave out and the cage dropped to the ground with a clang, startling Luffy, who let out a small yelp of surprise. Zoro collapsed next to her on his back, gasping as the pain in his side increased. Zoro, are you okay? Luffy asked worriedly, crawling across the small space in her cage to place a hand reassuringly on the swordsman's chest. Fine, Lu. No you're not, Nami hissed, standing over the two of them. What were you thinking? Lugging that heavy cage through town with that injury? Your guts could have popped out your side. So let them, Zoro hissed, fed up with her bickering. There had been no other option. Don't worry Nami, Luffy soothed, grinning as she remembered something. I've got some medicinal cream. That should stop the bleeding. She started to rummage through her pockets, looking for the cream. She put her hand on her right back pocket where she normally kept it but felt nothing. But, I always put it in that pocket, she thought, puzzled. She moved to her other back pocket, and not feeling it there quickly started to feel her two front pockets, panicking slightly. My cream, where is my cream? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? She glanced around the area quickly, wondering if she might have dropped it, and froze in realization. The bird. When it latched onto me earlier, the cream must have fallen out of my pocket. She sat back with a sigh of despair. No, I lost the cream. The cream is gone and Zoro is gonna die, she sniffled, her eyes tearing up slightly. What kind of captain was she? She couldn't even help her first mate. I'm not gonna die, you idiot, he snapped in irritation, turning to glare at her. It's just a minor wound. I'll sleep it off and be healed by tomorrow. He said the words to reassure Luffy because, for some reason he didn't understand, he already hated that sad look on her face. At his words, though, it quickly faded into a cautious but hopeful look. Really, but your wound, she said. Tisk. This is nothing, I have had far worse than this, it's going to take a lot more than that to take me down. He smirked at her cockily and Luffy returned the smile, her confidence restored. She silently agreed with him. Zoro was super strong. She knew that there was nothing in this world that could defeat him. She just needed to be reminded of it every once in a while. Zoro's smirk softened into a half smile. Glad to see his captain was calm and happy. Then he felt a tingling feeling, as if they were being watched, and looked up to see a dog. What's with this dog? Zoro asked himself. When Luffy heard Zoro say dog, she turned around and squealed. Doggy. She started to reach her hand through the cage and stopped, glaring at the bars, frustrated. This cage is starting to get annoying, she muttered, knocking her knuckles against a bar. Nami sighed from her position against the wall of a building where she had been watching them and approached the duo. You two are lucky I came along, she said, getting their attention. Zoro just stared at her in annoyance and she glared right back before pulling a large key out of her pocket and swirling it around a finger. The key? Luffy cheered, clapping her hands with glee. Zoro's glare lessened slightly and he glanced at Luffy relieved. If they had to move soon he would have picked the cage back up and ran until he collapsed, but he wouldn't be able to protect his captain like that. Getting Luffy out of that stupid cage would make things a lot easier for them. Nami walked over and quickly unlocked the cage before helping Luffy crawl out and straighten back up. The rubber girl stretched her arms above her head with a relieved sigh, muscles cramped after being in that cage for so long. She grinned at Nami thankfully before moving to sit next to Zoro. Right in front of where the dog sat it was a white dog with beady-looking eyes and dirty fur. It hadn't moved at all when Luffy approached and remained as still as a statue as she settled down into a comfortable position, so she made a silly face, trying to get a reaction from it. "Hey Zoro, I think this dog is frozen," Luffy stated while grinning, her hands on her crossed ankles, rocking back a little. "I don't give a damn. He can sit there forever for all I care," the swordsman grumbled, trying to fall asleep. "Do you think it's dead?" She held out a finger and moved to poke at the statue-like dog, curious, wondering if it would fall over when she touched it. "Don't touch it, Luffy. It could be a wild dog." But his warning reached deaf ears as Luffy's finger touched the dog's forehead and then she gave him a stroke on his fur. The dog didn't move at all but he wagged his tail slightly, accepting the girl's touch. Luffy giggled like a happy child and then began to pat him with her hand. "Aw, aren't you a sweet doggy," she cooed, still giggling. Zoro blinked and let out a sigh before letting his eyes fall shut again. That girl was so full of surprises, he wasn't sure he'd ever get used to it. Luffy gave the dog another pat on the head when all of a sudden a shout rang out. "Hey, stop that! Stop picking on poor Chow Chow and leave him alone." Luffy and Nami both turned to see an elderly-looking man with gray hair that had been arranged in 3 lumps. 2 on the sides, and 1 on the front. He wore a yellow-lined shirt with dark green pants, a brown armor chest plate with armored gauntlets over top of them and an old-style pair of glasses. "What? Oh, sir, I think you've got it wrong. We're not hurting him," said Nami waving her hands frantically, attempting to calm him down. "Yeah, I like doggies," said a grinning Luffy, and the old man paused, fully taking in the scene before him and realizing that the 3 meant no harm. "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were one of those nasty buggy pirates," he apologized, walking closer to the small group. "Then who might you be, old man?" Zoro asked, cracking one eye open, wary but sensing no real threat from the man. "Old man?" he huffed, turning to stare at Zoro. "Well, I'm the mayor of this town and the name is Mr. Boodle." Took notice of Zoro's still bleeding wound and his eyes widened. My. That's quite an injury you got there. I take it you guys had a run-in with Captain Buggy?" The old man knelt down next to Zoro to get a better look at his injury. "We need to get you patched up." Several minutes later, Boodle finally emerged from an empty house near them, wiping his hands on a cloth as he walked back over to where Luffy still sat next to Chow Chow. "How is Zoro?" she asked, tilting her head. "I told him he should really see a doctor but he insisted that he didn't need to and he just wanted to sleep it off," said Boodle, shaking his head in exasperation. Inside the house, Zoro was fast asleep on a large bed and snoring very loudly, limbs thrown haphazardly in all directions. Chow Chow yawned and shook his head to get the tiredness away. "So this dog's name is Chow Chow," Nami said, the question more of a statement, as she crouched down so she could caress the dog's head. "Why is he just sitting here like this? He sure is one lazy dog," Luffy giggled. "He's guarding the store," said Boodle with a solemn look. Nami and Luffy blinked in confusion and followed Boodle's gaze to the sign on the building behind them. The small one-story house had a beautifully decorated sign above it that said Pet Food Store and both girls hummed in understanding. "And the man that used to run this store was a very close friend of mine," he continued, his tone sad. The old man walked past the 2 girls and up the small stairs that led to the porch. He unlocked the store with a key attached to his belt and entered, Chow Chow not stopping him because he was a close friend of his master. Boodle walked back out after a second, carrying a large sack of dog food in his arms. He set it down and scooped a small amount out before placing it in a small bowl and setting that in front of Chow Chow. "When he passed away I took over responsibility of taking care of Chow Chow," Boodle said, watching the small dog chow down on his favorite food. When did he die? Nami asked. 3 months ago after fighting on his own for a very long time. Don't tell me this dog has been staying here all this time waiting for his master to return? Nami was bewildered. That seemed to be the consensus, Boodle said, sighing. He turned back to the shop and re-locked the front door before taking a seat on one of the porch steps and bringing out his smoking pipe to have a quick smoke. Talking about his old friend always left him wanting a smoke, something to ease the sadness he felt at seeing Chow Chow still there, waiting at the store. But I find it very hard to believe. Chow Chow is a smart dog. He's probably known for a while that his master is never coming back. Boodle took a drag from the pipe as he watched Chow Chow lick his bowl clean. Then why does he stay with the store? Nami asked, confused. If the dog knew his master was gone, why did he continue to stay at the shop after all this time? Luffy stared at Chow Chow mournfully, as if she understood why the dog stayed. I guess he has a connection to it, it's his treasure, he's guarding it. Boodle took another large drag of his pipe. His master left him with this shop, so that's why he protects it. I tried to bring him back to my place to keep him warm and give him a new home, but he won't take so much as step away from here. After Boodle finished his short explanation, neither of the girls said a word, both lost in their thoughts. In their eyes, Chow Chow was a brave, loyal and faithful dog, and they couldn't help but feel sympathy for him. Both understanding, in their own way, a little of what he was feeling. Then the ground started to shake around them, almost as if they were experiencing an earthquake, and a thunderous roar could be heard from miles away. Neither Luffy or Chow Chow moved a muscle or flinched at the loud sound, their heads turning in sync to stare in the direction of the noise. What the hell was that? Nami cried, springing to her feet as she heard a series of loud thumps in the distance, the sounds coming closer with every passing second. It's him, it's Beast Tamer Moji. Run! Boodle panicked, quickly darting around a corner at the end of the street. What the, come back! Then Nami turned, chasing after him and leaving behind Luffy and Chow Chow. Luffy sat in her traditional cross-legged position with the soles of her feet touching, hands gripping her ankles, and sighed. You're gonna fight, huh doggy? She asked, turning to look at Chow Chow. The dog barked once in affirmation and Luffy smiled down at him. Compared to every dog she had ever seen, Chow Chow was the bravest by far. Then a shadow blocked out the sun over both Luffy and Chow Chow, and she bent her head back to see a very large lion and a weird-looking guy towering over them. I see that your friends have deserted you. And right after you managed to escape too. Moji skied in disappointment. Who the heck are you? Luffy asked, watching the man curiously, no fear on her face. I'm known as the Beast Tamer Moji, a member of the Buggy Pirates. He replied proudly. Luffy continued to stare at him, blinking comically before stating. Whoa, that's a weird animal suit you got on. After she said it, Moji's clenched his fists, his blood boiling in anger. That was rude. This is not a costume, this is manly hair. He replied, pointing up at his hairstyle, feeling insulted from the girl's blunt comment. That even weirder. She raised an eyebrow in disbelief, doing another sweep of the strange man's outfit. You shouldn't assume that you're safe just because you escaped. You must not know of my terrifying skills. There is no animal in this world that Beast Tamer Moji can't bend to his bidding. He jumped down from his lion and strolled towards Chow Chow, who was growling at the approaching threat. Moji didn't appear intimidated by it and bent down to his knees and held out one hand. Shake, he commanded. Luffy watched, curious to see if this Moji guy really did have some skill at controlling animals. But then Chow Chow jumped forward, biting Moji's hand and digging his teeth in, causing the man to scream. He shook his hand, desperately trying to get the dog to let go, but Chow Chow just bit down harder, forcing another unmanly scream from the strange man. Luffy began to laugh at the funny man, hands wrapping around her stomach as she giggled. It appeared as if his so-called skill wasn't as great as he said. After a minute or so, Moji was finally able to get Chow Chow to release his hand, and he quickly jumped back on top of his lion, trying to act like nothing had happened. I don't have time for this nonsense. Tell me where Roronoa Zoro is before I kill you. Moji threatened. Luffy sobered immediately and jumped to her feet, glaring up at the man. Fat chance, weirdo. She stuck out her tongue in a childlike display of defiance, and Moji ground his teeth together in anger. Richie attack. The lion jumped forward towards the raven-haired girl, batting his paw at her and using his claws to strike. Luffy crossed her arms over her chest to deflect the attack, but Richie's massive paw was stronger than she had anticipated and broke through her guard, forcing her to jump to the side, barely missing the sharp claws. Moji saw an opening and ordered his friend to attack again. However, this time Luffy wasn't able to react fast enough, still trying to regain her footing from the last attack, and Richie's paw struck her, sending her flying back and crashing through a row of houses. Moji smiled in victory, thinking that he had killed the girl. After all, no regular person could survive a hit like that. Nice work, good boy, Richie. Now let's go find Zoro and defeat him to increase my reputation. Then we'll bring his head back for Captain Buggy. Richie turned to follow his master's command and continue the search, but froze when he spotted a pet food shop out of the corner of his eye. What's wrong? Moji asked, noticing that Richie had stopped. He followed his lion's line of sight and let out an exasperated sigh. Store. Okay, make it quick and let's go. Richie roared happily as he strode toward the building, already drooling at the thought of all of the food in the store. But Chow Chow stood his ground, paws planted firmly in front of the store, barking and growling in an attempt to get Richie to back off. Don't tell me this pathetic-looking mutt really thinks he can guard the shop, Moji scoffed, still upset that this mutt had bitten his hand. Luffy continued to slam back through the buildings, the wooden structures eventually slowing her movement enough to allow her to slide to a stop in a small alleyway. She quickly sat up, debris falling around her, and rubbed the top of her head quizzically. Yah, that was annoying. That stupid lion thing hits hard. She adjusted her hat before standing up and patting herself down, letting a grin slide over her features. Yosh. Now it's time to teach those buggy pirates a lesson, and then I need to convince Nami to be my navigator. She turned her head quizzically as she heard two sets of footsteps coming her way and watched as Nami and Boodle rounded the corner. How did you survive that attack? Nami was stunned to see the she captain in one piece, looking for all the world like she hadn't just slammed through a wooden building. You're alive. Are you alright? You're not hurt, are you? The mayor asked, stepping forward to check the girl over, not quite believing she could be completely uninjured. Luffy just glanced between the two, blinking in confusion. I just got lucky, I guess. Surviving that attack is not normal. I thought you'd be scattered all over. Nami countered as Luffy turned to glance back through the hole she had made, wiping the last of the grime off her vest. Why did you come to this town in the first place, and how did you get involved with those pirates? The mayor had been wondering that ever since he met them. Their arrival couldn't be just simple coincidence. All I'm doing is searching for the chart of the Grand Line and a good navigator to join my crew, Luffy replied. Nami stared at the stubborn girl who still wanted her to be part of her crew even though she continuously said, no, not to mention she was a pirate thief. Pirate thieves and pirate captains could not mix together, they just couldn't. Why couldn't Luffy understand that? Luffy ran past Nami and Boodle, yelling back at them. I think the guy in the animal suit said he was looking for Zoro, so I gotta stop him, she said, and her eyes narrowed in determination, her fists clenching as she ran. She wouldn't let this guy hurt Zoro, not on her watch. Back in the town square, Chow Chow stood his ground, not intimidated by the giant lion that was slowly approaching him. He growled and snarled at Richie, trying to force the lion to leave, but it only seemed to anger Richie, and the lion used a paw to sweep Chow Chow out of his way. As soon as the way to the shop was cleared, Richie licked his lips and proceeded to destroy the shop sign and then entire front of the store in his attempt to get at the food. Chow Chow, injured but not out, forced himself back onto his feet before charging the large lion again. Flashback: in a small shop in Orangetown, an elderly man carefully carried a large bag of dog food he had just grabbed from the storage room. He had wrinkles that showed his age, short purple hair and a matching beard. He wore a light red shirt, white pants, a red wool cap, and a worn pair of shoes. His name is Honker and he ran the local pet store. In the middle of the main room a small white puppy sat and watched Honker work, his eyes never leaving the old man. Chow Chow, this shop belonged to us now. Honker smiled down at Chow Chow over the top of the bag, laughing when the little dog barked in agreement. Chow Chow ran towards the storage room, deciding to help his friend, and grabbed a second sack with his teeth. He tried to drag it but didn't appear to be making much progress when Honker approached and stopped the small dog. "That bag is way too heavy for you, Chow Chow," he laughed, happy his friend wanted to help him. On the outskirts of Orangetown, Honker had gotten his cart stuck in a hole and was attempting to pull it out. Chow Chow, now older, wanted to help and began to push at the wheel with his front paws. The cart finally came loose, but Chow Chow's paws got stuck in the wheel as it turned. Luckily, Honker was by his side quickly and was able to pull Chow Chow out. "Be careful, Chow Chow, don't hurt yourself. Leave this to me, okay?" Honker found Chow Chow in the storage room with 3 sacks of doggy biscuits around him, torn and eaten. "Bad Chow Chow, I told you not to eat the merchandise." Honker scolded Chow Chow but couldn't help the smile on his face that showed he wasn't truly mad at the small dog. Instead, he held out a plate full of meat and lobster to Chow Chow. "So let's chow down with real food." Soon they were having a tug of war with a large piece of meat, fighting for who would get to eat it. "Chow Chow, I'm going to see the doctor for a checkup, but I'll be back, so guard the shop until I return," Honker said, patting the little dog on the head as he stepped out of the shop. Chow Chow barked immediately and with no hesitation. He would guard the shop with his life. Hold down the fort. End flashback **. As Chow Chow bit Richie's leg, he remembered the great times he spent with his master, the joyous memories he still held close. How he and his master worked together as a team, enjoying laughter and family moments together, and he remembered his last words, his last promise to guard the shop. Even though his master was dead, Chow Chow would keep his promise till his last breath. Richie roared in pain as Chow Chow dug his teeth deeper to the lion's flesh. Chow Chow let go of the lion's paw after another minute and growled again, telling the lion to leave and showing that he would back up his threat, but Richie refused. The lion struck Chow Chow again with his claws, resulting in a deep gash in his shoulder, but Chow Chow refused to give up. His master was counting on him to protect his shop. He got up again and stood in front of Richie, which aggravated the lion tenfold. Moji watched the dogs struggle to keep Richie away from his shop in amusement. "So you're not going to give up now, huh?" He smirked and Chow Chow growled, barely keeping his footing after losing so much blood, but he would not let his precious treasure be taken by pirates. Chow Chow snarled as he hurtled toward Richie in a last, desperate attack, but Richie was too strong and too fast to be defeated easily. He lifted his paw and, with a heavy blow, struck Chow Chow in the chest. The pet food store was on fire. After Richie had barged in and ate every last sack of dog food he could find, Moji had burned the shop using a pack of matches and left the scene. Chow Chow woke up a minute later, having been knocked out by Richie's last attack, and saw his shop, his home, his treasure burning. It was at that moment that Luffy rounded the corner, just in time to see that the shop that the white doggy held so dear to his heart was on fire. She looked around the square, seeing splashes of blood everywhere and the evidence of a fight, before looking back at Chow Chow, seeing his fur smeared with blood. He has a connection to it, it's his treasure. He's guarding it, his master left him with this shop, so that's why he protects it. She remembered the old man's words as she watched the doggy howl in anguish, in agony at the thought that he had lost his precious treasure forever. Luffy's eyes filled with rage and her teeth clenched together. She had come to find beast tamer Moji to protect Zoro, but now he would pay for this as well. What he had done was unforgivable. Richie strolled away from the store, carrying an extra box of food between his teeth for a later snack, as Moji examined the wound on his hand, cursing the dumb mud under his breath for attacking him when he had first approached. "Damn it, I can't believe it, that wretched little dog bit me," he cursed again. He was glad he had destroyed the said to hold deer, the mud deserved it. After a minute he sighed, turning back to the task at hand. He still needed to find Roronoa Zoro. Richie continued to walk through the empty streets but stopped suddenly when Luffy emerged from a side alley, blocking their path. Moji stared at her, frowning. He thought he had killed her, but apparently the annoying little girl had survived. "Hey, I thought I killed you. What are you still doing alive?" Moji asked impatiently. "I'm afraid you can't get rid of me that easily," Luffy grinned, crossing her arms over her chest. Even though she was smiling, there was no humor in her tone or face, but Moji took no notice of that. "This time, crush her head into the ground, Richie," he commanded as he jumped off of Richie's back so the lion could move freely. Richie roared and charged at Luffy, teeth bared in a snarl. I'm not going to be beaten by a stupid lion, she hissed, stretching her arms forward. Her arms twisted together like a snake and each hand grabbed a fistful of Richie's mane before lifting the giant lion into the air. He spun around as her arms unwound themselves and she used the momentum of her spin to flip him over and slam him into the ground, knocking the lion out instantly. Her hat was knocked off her head from the breeze that had been caused by her attack and it came to rest on the ground next to her feet as she turned her glare to Moji. The pirate was gaping at her in shock, barely able to believe that the tiny girl before him had just taken out a huge lion in 5 seconds flat. What are you? Well, I ate a devil fruit, she began, shadowing her eyes underneath her hair, the move making her look even more menacing. Moji trembled in fear at her words. The girl had been a devil fruit user all along. That had to be the reason she survived Richie's earlier attack. So you have a devil fruit like Captain Buggy? His shaking worsened when Luffy didn't say a word back to him. He knew how fearsome Buggy and his power was. If this girl was even half as powerful as his captain, then. I'm sorry, I apologize for attacking you. I don't want any trouble. Moji bowed his head, waving his hands in front of him in cowardly attempt to try and placate her. Luffy turned around until she was completely facing Moji and growled. There is no reason to apologize to me. Because of you that dog will never get his treasure back, and now, because of that, I'm gonna kick your sorry ass. Her tone was cold as ice and her onyx eyes were like daggers. Before Moji could even think of running away, Luffy had shot her arm out and grabbed onto the front of his shirt, pulling him towards her and using the momentum to punch him hard, knocking him unconscious. Back in town square, Chow Chow was now sitting silently, gazing sadly at the burned remains of the shop he and his master had built together. A shop that he would never see again. Nami and Boodle stood on the sidelines, watching the poor dog sadly. Pirates, they're all the same. They're all a bunch of heartless bastards that destroy everything that people hold dear without giving it a second thought. Nami hissed with a mix of bitter anger and sorrow. The sight of Chow Chow brought back memories she didn't want to think about and she grasped her left shoulder, fist tightening in anger. All pirates were S in her book. There were no exceptions. It was at that moment that Luffy appeared. No smile on her face, a small box of dog food clutched in one hand. Oh, you're alive, pirate, Nami spit out, pure disgust in her tone. You know, I thought for sure that lion was going to tear your head off and end it all, and I wish he had. 'Cause then there would be one less pirate in the world. Nami couldn't stop herself, she was too angry. Or maybe I should kill you right now before you can gather a crew and destroy everything else? She rushed towards Luffy, seeing nothing but red, thinking she could finish the smaller girl off, but before she could get close, Boodle yanked her back. Luffy watched Nami struggle to get away from the mayor, no expression in her dark eyes. She knew that the Oranget wanted to attack and kill her, but she seemed to be unfazed by her harsh words. Calm down, there is no need for violence, said Boodle, shocked at the girl's sudden burst of anger. As if you could ever kill me, Luffy scoffed, walking away, not giving Nami another glance. Maybe I'll try and see, I said. Stop, what is wrong with you people? Luffy approached Chow Chow and carefully set the box of dog food in front of him before taking a seat next to him, her legs crossed. Nami stopped struggling in Boodle's hold, both of them surprised to see Luffy, a pirate, showing kindness to a dog. The raven-haired girl lifted one hand from her lap and patted Chow Chow lightly on the head, not wanting to aggravate his injuries. Sorry, that's all I could save for ya. That bastard lion ate all the rest of it. She fought the lion, in order to save the dog's food? Nami thought, confused. She was in shock that a pirate, of all people, would do something good for someone else's sake, with no thought of reward. She gazed at Luffy, her expression softening, and thought that maybe she had been wrong. Luffy was nothing like any pirate she had ever met before, she was different. You fought well. Course I didn't actually see you defending the store, but I can tell you gave it your all, Luffy said, smiling sweetly at Chow Chow. The dog didn't reply and instead grasped the box of food in his mouth and began to walk away from the destroyed store. Just as he was about to turn a corner, Chow Chow turned his head to Luffy and barked. Thanks, good luck to you too, doggy. She smiled brightly at the dog, waving her arm over her head in farewell. Chow Chow barked twice more and then left, disappearing into the alley. Nami couldn't help but smile at that. I guess there is more to Luffy than what meets the eyes. What? You were defeated? How? Buggy stared down at his injured first mate in shock. Moji had come back covered in blood and bruises, and even Richie was badly hurt. I'm very sorry, Captain. Sorry that I failed, Moji said, kneeling before his captain and fighting the urge to stay awake. The punch that the girl had hit him with had most likely given him a concussion and he was still feeling the effects. Moji, I can't believe you were defeated by Roronoa Zoro, Buggy exclaimed, automatically assuming that his opponent had been the green-haired swordsman. No, it wasn't Zoro. It was that straw hat girl, Moji yelled, forcing himself to his feet, ignoring his sudden bout of dizziness. He did not want his captain to underestimate that devil of a girl. What? There's no way that skinny little girl could have gotten the better of you. Buggy didn't believe that one little girl had actually beat his strongest man. It was preposterous to even consider. But sir, she is no ordinary girl, she ate a. Before Moji could finish his sentence, his dizziness got the better of him and caused him to fall back down, passing out as soon as he hit the floor. Now I'm really pissed off. Alright. Prepare all the remaining special buggy balls. I'm going to blast this miserable town into smithereens. Sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to yell at you. It's just, Nami was embarrassed that she had yelled so harshly at the younger girl, but Luffy just halted her apology with one of her bright grins. That's okay. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Then she got up from her sitting position, dusting her shorts off as Nami watched on with a smile. No need to apologize, Luffy said, still smiling. Then Boodle clenched his hands irritably. I'm pathetic, Chow Chow and you young ones have fought so hard for this town and yet I'm the mayor and I've done nothing but sit back and watch our town be obliterated by Buggy and his despicable crew. As he got himself more and more worked up, his voice got louder and louder. Luffy and Nami glanced at each other before both ran over to try and calm him down, knowing that charging into a battle recklessly was dangerous. That bad, said Nami. 40 years ago, this whole area was nothing but barren rugged land. We all worked together to create fields for our crops. We opened stores and built everything from the ground up. This town is a treasure to me and all the citizens from here. I refuse to let Buggy and his crew terrorize us anymore. He yelled all this, ready to take action, and Luffy stepped away. She couldn't stop him from this fight. She wouldn't deny anyone the right to fight for what they held dear, but she would back him up. Before she could open her mouth to say so, a sudden blast sounded, followed by fire and debris, destroying another part of Orangetown right next to Luffy, Nami, and Boodle. He'll destroy it all, Boodle murmured sadly, and Nami hummed in agreement, turning to Luffy, watching as the girl's eyes widened. Luffy shrieked in alarm when she remembered what the house next to them was, startling both Boodle and Nami. No, Zoro was sleeping in there, she yelled, quickly rushing towards the destroyed mess of houses and the place where Zoro had been resting before dropping to her knees to start digging. Zoro? Zoro? Can you hear me? Say something? Anything? She shouted, her heart beating faster as her worry mounted. Zoro was strong, she knew he was strong, but he was still injured and that Buggy Ball Cannon was strong enough to even kill someone like her. I'm sure he's dead now, Boodle said sadly, shaking his head. Shut up, Luffy snarled, glaring back at Boodle before continuing to dig. Zoro is not dead. He's not, as Luffy muttered that mantra under her breath. She felt the beginnings of tears coming on. This day had been awful so far. Zoro had saved her when she fell in the ocean, then got injured saving her from the cage, and was now buried under who knows how much debris. She hadn't been able to do anything. She was a useless captain if she couldn't protect her crew, and she had promised Zoro she would help him achieve his dream. Nami watched Luffy, shocked that the girl seemed close to crying. Zoro! She screamed, hands clenching into fists against the wood beneath her, when suddenly. Ow! That's one hell of a way to wake a guy up. Luffy gasped in shock as she recognized that voice, her hands loosening their grip and her heart swelling with hope. She glanced up from the rubble towards the voice to see Zoro sitting up groggily, debris falling around him. I could use a few more Z's, and who the hell was shouting? He carefully climbed out of the crumbled house, scratching at his hair lazily, completely ignoring his surroundings. Luffy smiled, a few stray tears falling before she stumbled to her feet and sprinted toward Zoro, tackling him to the ground in a huge hug. Her arms wrapped around his neck and she buried her face in his chest, nuzzling against his collarbone happily. Zoro, you're alive. I'm so glad you're okay, she said, giggling with relief. Zoro was taken aback, a little disoriented at being tackled back to the ground by a red blur. But when she hugged him and he was able to recognize Luffy's unique scent, he relaxed, unconsciously returning the hug and wrapping his own arms around her back. As she nuzzled at his neck, he could feel a blush spreading to his ears, just now starting to grasp that he was hugging his female captain tightly against his chest. "Would you get off me?" he yelled, letting his arms drop but not pushing her off. "Why are you hugging me?" Nami smiled and had to stifle a small laugh at the look on the so-called famous bounty hunter's face. He was a brighter red than she had ever seen on anyone, and it was at that point that she decided that he and Luffy would make an adorable couple. "I refuse to let him get away with this. I won't stand for it. I can't let this SBAG destroy the town that our people worked so hard for. I'm the mayor of this town. I will protect it and its inhabitants. I swear on my dying breath." As he was about to run off to find Buggy, Nami grabbed him by the scruff of his neck, halting his suicidal rush. "You can't defeat Buggy on your own," Nami said, exasperated, feeling the beginnings of a headache coming on. "Perhaps, but there are some fights that a man can't run from, isn't that right?" Boodle asked, turning to look at Luffy and Zoro. Zoro had finally managed to convince Luffy to stop hugging him and get off his stomach, and she was now helping him to his feet. "That's right, old man," Luffy laughed, letting go of Zoro's hand and turning to face the other two. She still kept herself near Zoro, standing just in front of the green-haired swordsman. That worried feeling she had felt when he was buried still hadn't left her yet, and she wanted to stay near him for now. "Shut up, don't egg him on, Luffy. It's too dangerous for him to fight Buggy on his own," Nami cried. "I know it's dangerous," Boodle shouted, surprising Nami. She was so shocked. Her grip on Boodle's armor slipped and he used the opportunity to break free of her hold and run towards the remains of Buggy's lair. The three watched the old man disappear around the corner, knowing how his fight with Buggy would end. The old man knew it too, but he was willing to go and fight anyway. "Was the mayor crying?" Nami asked hesitantly. She could have sworn, before she let go of the mayor, that she saw tears coming out from his eyes. "Was he? Huh, I didn't notice." Luffy shrugged, still watching the spot where he had disappeared. "Looks like the party just got more exciting," Zoro said, feeling both relieved and disappointed that Luffy had released her hold on him, but as they stood, his own hands had made their way to her hips and still rested loosely on her waist. "Yeah, it sure does." Shee-hee-hee-hee. Luffy was excited now. She had decided she would help the old man, and now that Zoro was back up they could fight together again. "This is no time for laughter. We've got to do something before he gets himself killed," Nami yelled, starting to panic. Didn't these two take anything seriously? "Don't worry, I like that old man. There is no way I'll let him die," Luffy stated seriously, her expression sobering as she made eye contact with Nami. Zoro gazed down at her, sensing her change in attitude, before realizing that he was still holding her waist in a semi-possessive manner. His hands shot back as if he had been burned and he turned away, trying to mask the blush that had come to his face. "I have a feeling that this is going to become a regular occurrence with her," he thought, sighing as he carefully made his way out of the rubble and onto the solid brick street. Luffy turned when Zoro moved and blinked as she noticed Zoro's blush, tilting her head in confusion. "Zoro, are you okay? Why are your cheeks red?" "It's nothing, let's just go and save that old man," Zoro muttered, attempting to deflect her. "Wait, you're still wounded. You can't fight like this," Nami protested, watching as Zoro tied his bandana on his head and turned to her with a shark-like grin. "Yeah, so what? The injury to my reputation is a lot worse than the injury to my gut. And we had to go anyway," Luffy agreed. "If we plan to get to the Grand Line, we're going to need to steal that chart back." Then Luffy held out her right hand to Nami, a large grin on her face. "Are you gonna join our crew, or what? Come on." Nami frowned down at the younger girl's hand and slapped it away after a second. "I'll never sink so low as to become a pirate." Luffy's face began to fall and she quickly continued. "But I suppose we can team up in order to achieve our common goals." Nami smirked. Luffy cheered, pumping her fist in the air. She had finally gotten her navigator. "Back at Buggy's lair, ready to fire at my command," said Buggy, ready to destroy another part of the worthless town in retaliation for his first mate's injuries. He opened his mouth to order the shot when someone shouted, "Come on out, Buggy the Clown." Curious, Buggy walked toward the edge of the building and looked down to see a panting old man, leaning against a wooden spear. "I'm Mayor Boodle. This town is my. Let you terrorize my people any longer, so come on out and fight me." Boodle yelled louder than he had ever yelled before. "You idiot. This town is no treasure. Treasure is gold, silver, and jewels, so cut the crap, old man, and get lost before I kill you," Buggy hissed, at his wits' end. All these complications and headaches were leaving him in a rather foul mood. "You can never understand how I feel," the mayor sighed, almost feeling pity for the pirate, but before he could say anything else, something grabbed his throat and he was suddenly lifted up into the air. Buggy laughed at the surprise on the old man's face as used his chop power to strangle him until there was no more air in his lungs. "Ha ha ha, soon, I'm going to conquer the Grand Line and flashily obtain all the world's richest treasures, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. All the world will belong to me. Now, if this town means so much to you, then perhaps I can do you a favor and kill you first. That way you won't have to see me destroy your precious little town," said Buggy, grinning madly. He could take out his frustrations on the old man, and then he would track down Zoro and the two bitches following him. "Shut up and, fight me, already," Boodle gasped, feeling the edges of his vision darkening but refusing to give in. He would not die here. "Don't get cocky. I'll never let you destroy this town, even if it costs me my very life." Boodle was having trouble breathing and Buggy chuckled. "So be it." He moved to finish him off, but before Buggy could make a single move, he felt something grab at the hand wrapped around the mayor's throat. He glanced back down and gasped in shock. "That Straw Hat Girl. Not again." Luffy stood in front of the panting mayor, Buggy's hand clenched tightly in one of hers. Behind her, Nami was helping the old man to his feet and providing a shoulder to lean on as he caught his breath while Zoro watched the rooftop warily, one eye on his captain. "I'm here to kick your ass, just like I promised, Buggy," Luffy said, grinning that manic grin, her eyes sparkling with determination. She was ready to kick some clown ass.